RotoGrinders, a start of 3.5 hours of NFL DFS conversation, taking y'all straight up the lock, straight up the kickoff. It starts now. It's myself, Dean7904, if you want to get all technical. It's TastefulTides, Tim. Tim is a kind of a single entry, 3-entry max specialist, as well as Bobby Gomes. Bobby Gomes, you know Bobby. He won $1 million once upon a time. He's going to try to win $1 million once more today. And Bobby, I believe you're talking pre-show. You're also going to be entering the single entry streets. Are you dabbling all over the place? Are you still firing? Are you doing the little MMA deal? But MMA, wait, no, that's a completely different sport. MMA. Are you also max entering? In addition, you're running the some single entry stuff as well.
I usually play single entry anyways, pretty much every week,
Okay.
but I'm not MMEing this week. I'm playing like 10 teams. But yeah, I'll be in the higher dollar millie, so hoping to take that down.
Is there a reason for that? You're trying to shake things up?
I don't know. I just when the 555s, I'd rather pay up for the millie than go to the $10, I guess.
Gotcha. 13 game slate today, no buys. 13 gamer, despite that, still no high totals, which is kind of sort of somewhat weird, but that's basically the state of this season. I believe the highest total on the board is a 46.5, and most of that's going to the Dolphins. 46.5. Miami is an 8.5 point favorite here versus New England. A little bit of weather lurking out there. I'll go ahead and drop Kevin Ross weather report out there, but he was talking yesterday about Schefter, and some people are kind of pumping out maybe that there's too much to be concerned about in Denver. Yellow officially, Kansas City, Denver. Obviously that will change. That is a late kickoff, so we're still 6-7 hours away from that one getting going. So I imagine Roth will have an update, but I don't think we're too freaked out as far as weather. It's going to be cold. It's going to be in the 20s out there in Denver. Tim, good morning. We're going to talk a little bit of cash game build at the top. We're going to give our cash game core plays. You just gave some to producer Steve. I'll throw it up on the screen for the people to see. We'll have that conversation. How are we feeling about the slates? I just tweeted out, Tim, this slate would be a lot more fun. Let's be honest. It'd be more fun if Sam Darnold was a thing, right? I feel like it'd be more fun. I don't know. Would everyone be playing Sam Darnold? I think I would be on DK. He's so cheap in that system. And the other thing is, and we'll kind of dig into it, especially at wide receiver, find me a wide receiver. It's 4-4 or less that you like, because I don't know if there is one. I'm not sure that you feel good about. I should phrase it that way. But yeah, Tim, welcome. What do we think? Give me the 30,000 foot view as far as today's slate. It's big. I don't know how much there is to love. There's a lot to like, but yeah, let's get your thoughts.
Yeah, it's definitely a bigger slate than we've been having. No buys like you said. Definitely, I don't know, like you said, not a lot of crazy good value in the wide receiver spot today. But yeah, definitely looking forward to breaking it down. Not sure if Steve has those names up on the board yet, but we were going to go over some core plays. I kind of wanted to hear your guys' thought on cash game QB. I have Lamar as the cash game QB, but I've just thought, it's if you go that way, it's kind of hard to pay up at wide receiver. So that's kind of where I'm kind of stuck. It's do you pay that 8-1 for Lamar, or do you go to somebody a little bit cheaper and try to get a more expensive, better wide receiving core in your cash game build?
Well, I'll jump in here and just say this. The tricky thing is, if you play Lamar, you're probably not getting one of the big spends, A.J. Brown or Hill or Kupp. But, and I kind of teased before, the 4,400 and under, give or take, is terrible. But the five-ish area for receivers today is kind of awesome. I love the 5-ish area. So you can just fire at a bunch of mid-tier receivers. And I didn't say Jamar Chase as well. He's another one of those big spends, which I think Brown's my favorite, and we'll talk about it. He's just been absolutely insane of late. At least 125, 130 yards in his last 4 or 5 games or so. He's got an awesome matchup against Washington. Washington, pretty horrendous in the secondary. But yeah, we live in a world with salary cap, and I like Lamar. I think is the best quarterback for cash if you can get there. Lamar and Hurts, kind of 1A, 1 and 1A. We'll have that conversation as well. I read a bunch of optimals too, Tim, and to your point, nothing's really, there's no quarterback that's sticking out. You're getting some Prescott, you're getting some Hurts, some Stroud, some Purdy who's playing in lieu of Darnold. Lamar feels like my favorite, in the dome. Even if they're ahead, he'll get some fantasy points running the ball. I feel really, really good about that Baltimore offense clicking of late, and Arizona probably not going to slow him down either. But for salary cap reasons, and again, there's really no salary savers at receiver. We'll talk about the tight end. I'm sure, Trey McBride is you're basically your cash game build is going to come pre-made with Trey McBride. It's up on the board right now. Bobby, your thoughts as far as that? Do you have a clear and favorite quarterback? And I think the most popular single entry quarterback today is going to be Lamar. And we always talk about how the best stuff tends to rise up in single entry, 3 entry max, and Lamar looks awesome, but knowing the way you play, and if you think that Lamar is going to be the most heavily owned quarterback that is, I could see you not playing him. You tell me, how are you handling that?
Yeah, and single entry, I'm looking at Lamar will definitely be in my player pool, but I'm also looking at Jalen Hurts. I'm looking at CJ Stroud. I'm probably going to take a shot on Tua. This is my play. I'm just building out a player pool for single entry. Mac Jones is someone I'm considering as well. But yeah, I understand why Lamar is projecting so well for cash games. I feel like in my single entry builds that aren't like high dollar tournaments or that are more like 100-man fields, I'd probably go Lamar just to play Lamar. But other stuff I'll probably get different. But yeah, no, I think he makes sense as the cash game QB. You hit on the 5 range, the 5K range of wide receiver. I think it's really strong. Zay Flowers, he's an interesting question for me in tournaments because I think everyone's going to rush to go there. And I like Nico Collins at 5.5. There's other guys in that range that I have interest in as well. So he might be the guy I'm trying to get off of. I also don't I understand like Christian Kirk at 5.9 is an interesting play. Deontay Johnson at 5, Addison at 5.7, Ridley at 5.8. Like they're all plays, I think, in tournaments like single entry. If everyone's going to play Flowers, you can kind of get away. So if you didn't want to play Lamar, I think that route's fine as well. Trey McBride's like the locked in cash game tight end. You think it's AJ Brown over Chase at receiver, Dean?
I mean, look, it's 51-49 kind of a coin toss, but just the way Brown has been of late, he's clearly the alpha there now, separate himself from Smith as the number 1 receiver there in Philly. The secondary there for Washington's rough. Chase, you're kind of betting on the comeback, I presume. Higgins should be healthy, so maybe he gets a little bit more than he's been getting of late. He's had some bad games, just kind of like gutting it out. Maybe if you want to call him, being just kind of exercising, as they say, just kind of being out there, but not necessarily a target. I like Chase. I like him fine. I'm not going to talk anybody out of it, but, I would take Brown over Chase if nothing else was a thing as far as ownership and all that. Do you have a thought on that, Tim? And I'm guessing for your cash game, you probably can't get to either. Maybe you can if you don't play Lamar, but it sounds like you're siding with Lamar.
So right now I'm siding with Lamar, but that's kind of my decision point. But I'm not going to go to Chase or Brown. If I go up, I'm going to Hill or Cooper Kupp. I mean, I'm not even going to bother. If I decide not to play Lamar, then I'm going all the way up, likely to Hill. So I'm not even going to bother with Chase or Brown decision in cash games anyway. Obviously, in tournaments, you can do what you want with those guys. They're obviously, great receivers. But if I'm going up at wide receiver, it's going to be Hill or Kupp for me.
Our projections think Hill is like the clear favorite amongst those 4, which is pretty interesting. Hill getting 13%, Kupp at 5, Chase at 13, Brown at 14. Kupp kind of the outlier. Everybody else is basically getting the same ownership. And then, beyond that, there's a next tier. I guess Puka Nacua is the next guy as far as DK fantasy projection, median projection, that is. I just
look at that ownership on Kupp for tournaments. I mean, that's fantastic. I don't care that it's against, Dallas. It's Cooper Kupp. If he's really going to be 5% owned, that's just tremendous. So
you going to be over on Kupp, Bobby?
Yeah, I'm going to try to be. Can I ask a question though? Just wondering, if Zach Moss is out, are you still playing Kamara as your cat? Wouldn't you drop to Jonathan Taylor? I would imagine.
Likely. Actually, I would stick with Kamara and Brees Hall and just make Taylor my third running back.
Okay.
That's probably what I would do, Bobby. I'm not 100% on that, but I think Kamara is like kind of a must play in cash, in my opinion, just because of the target share that he gets. Just unbelievable amount of receptions and dump offs that Derek Carr gives to him in the fastest paced matchup on the board. So I think Kamara is not coming out of my cash game lineup.
So 14 targets last game. This is kind of an indictment on Carr, I think. Good Lord. Check down Charlie, if you want to call him that, I suppose. He caught 12 passes. That's 2 touchdowns, basically, he's starting with. Obviously, you can't assume he's going to catch 12 more passes again. I'm talking DK, where you're getting full point PPR. He's perfectly fine on FanDuel as well, but I think that scoring system certainly benefits him. 8 targets the previous game, 3 before that against the Wing. I'm not really sure what happened there. And, of course, his first game back, he also had 14 targets. It's completely outrageous. Also, Michael Thomas is questionable. He was ill. That's how it's done there, Arthur Smith, right? That's all you got to do. It's not very hard. Just tell the people that somebody's not feeling particularly well, and we'll see. Do we have an update as far as Thomas? I saw it in the middle of the night last night. Anything new? Do you guys see anything today? I've not looked for it.
I looked at Scheffner's Twitter not too long ago. I didn't see anything, but I can check again real quick.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we get actives and inactives at 11:30. Obviously. Oh, you haven't said hello to the chat. What's up, chat? Good morning, chat. Welcome to the show. Kindly hit that like button, subscribe, turn on those notifications, do all those things. Get comfortable because we take you all straight up to lock. Of course, we yield to Erik Beimfohr and SquirrelPatrol. They jump at around 11 o'clock or so, I believe. Let's see, who do we have coming on later? I think it's Brit. And let's see, TJ, Brit, and I'm missing the third person. I don't see who it is, but I'm sure they're spectacular. I don't know why I don't have that on my list for some reason, but my apologies. But yeah, with Crunch Time will answer all your questions. And if you have any questions, by all means, throw them in the chat. We'll do our best to knock those out, especially if they pertain to the conversation. I have a question for the chat. We're going to talk some cash games, and I'm curious. Chat, tell me, there is not a third person. There you go. That makes sense. That's why I can't find them. Thank you, producer Steve. So, chat, tell me your favorite receiver on DraftKings. I want to see this list of names. Your favorite receiver on DraftKings. That's let's go with like 4,400 or less. 4,400 or less. Your favorite receiver on DraftKings, because it is slim pickings. It is really, really rough, and that's one of the things that's kind of making it difficult because sometimes you have those 3K guys or 3-ish-K guys that can help you out salary wise. Obviously, Trey McBride for tight end. Let's just knock that out, Tim. Why is Trey McBride the clear and obvious tight end today in cash?
Well, I mean, it's not like you have to play him, but I mean, he's so cheap, and he's projecting for 9.5 points, which is actually, I think, 9th best raw points for $2,800. So I mean, that's just what you do in cash games. Like, he's obviously the top points per dollar tight end. Do I want to get to him like in single entry GPPs? Probably not. Like, that's the type of player that probably is a guy that I'd probably be looking to fade in single entry, but in cash games, strictly cash games, he's definitely the guy. Like, the way lineup construction sets up, I don't see really anybody else that I would consider. Maybe if you have the money, Jake Ferguson, but I'm not going up to like Andrews, Hawkinson, or Kelsey in cash.
Yeah, Bobby, I'm curious how you're handling that in tournaments because, McBride is going to be the most popular tight end. Very, very obvious. Not just cash, but tournaments as well. He's also, Lamar is one of our favorite quarterbacks. People love their run backs. He's a ready-made run back sitting right there. I guess you can go with Marquise Brown as well. Those receivers in the 5K. Little revenge game for him, for Hollywood. Typically, general rules, Bobby, I don't like to have the super chalky tight end because tight end is such a volatile position. But, this is also a really, really cheap player, projects well. Salary is kind of tough this week. If he can get me 12 points or so, like somehow if he falls in the box, that'd be spectacular. Obviously, you're missing out on guys like Kelsey or Andrews who are out of that game. But how are you handling it? Because I think this is one where you're probably supposed to come in under, but I don't know. Your thoughts as far as tournaments in this super chalky tight end McBride.
Yeah, I'm probably going to come in under on McBride at 2.6. I understand like how well he's projecting for cash. It's a pretty obvious play. In tournaments, I don't mind getting up where I can, and I kind of like this 3 to 4K receiver range. I think more than most. Two people just mentioned Jennings and Shaheed in chat. Shaheed's up at 3.9. Wouldn't be a direct pivot off McBride, but I think he's someone you could save salary on. And then Jennings
I
is
like
down.
Shaheed quite a bit. I'm glad somebody brought him up. Sorry,
Yeah.
Bobby.
And the Michael Thomas thing too. Like if Thomas is somehow hindered or if he's out, like Shaheed's gonna just skyrocket. So he'll be the de facto guy, I imagine.
I kind of like him anyway, so I hope Thomas is in.
Yeah, I hope Thomas plays.
You know, same thing.
People
with
want
Taylor.
that guy.
Like, I hope Moss is in so I can just play Taylor. Yeah, another guy I like is Demario Douglas. I think we've seen in this first Miami game that even with Juju healthy, the Patriots tried to incorporate him until he fumbled. And then once he fumbled, he was out for the game. And I remember this very distinctly because I lost a good portion of money on him. I had a very high exposure to him on that showdown slate. So yeah, I don't mind Douglas at 3.3. Odell at 3.8. I think he's coming along and he just differentiates Lamar stacks. He had so no one was really watching the Jacksonville game because it was in England, but he almost took a slant to the house. It was like a 30-yard play and just showed that he had those legs. He'd definitely be the last of the 3K guys that I like, but just because Lamar is popular, I just included him in my player pool. So if he hits some stuff, he hits some stuff. But if I had to rank them, it'd probably be Shaheed, Jennings, Douglas, and then Odell from 3 to 4K.
I kind of like Michael Gallup just because I think Dak's in a pretty decent spot. So, and that's going to be leverage if you stack Dak and get away from Pollard. I think that's a way to get leverage in large field GPPs. So you could go Dak and Gallup for really, really cheap.
I think the best leverage there is playing Ferguson or Lamb because I think Gallup's going to
works too.
I think Ferguson's going to get played. He'll be like the top 2 or 3 tight ends, right? As far as ownership, am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah, Gallup right now is 8%, and
Ferguson is the second most popular tight end.
I ran projections all last night, and Dak was hitting everything. I don't think it's the greatest spot for Dak. Like Dak struggles traditionally versus zone, not to be the no ball guy, but yeah, even though he was hitting all my stuff, I dropped him down a little bit in terms of projection just because I was getting so much of him, which could be a mistake because I really like CD in the spot. I think he's in a really good spot. I like Cup. I wrote them up on Friday. I don't know if I'll be using that exact run back, but both players will be in my pool. Like Tim said, Cup's way too low on for the slate.
We did see 10 targets last week from Gallup, by the way, just kind of throwing it out there. Like they didn't do anything, but he got 10 targets. 5 the previous week, 6, 7. So he's getting targeted. He hasn't really done it yet this year. I don't think he scored yet this season either. Been a pretty big disappointment for what it's worth. Also, Cooks is getting his revenge game today versus the Rams. Just throwing it out there. Didn't mean to cut you off there, Bobby, but I thought it was just worth noting. Like Gallup is getting the ball thrown his way to some degree for a 3K player. Just we have not seen the results just yet. But go ahead, continue. Finish your thoughts.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, like I thought Gallup was going to be more chalky than what we have him currently. So I wonder if that ticks up a bit. Gallup stinks. Like the deep dive on Gallup and he sucks, So yeah, I would probably prefer getting to these options of leverage like CD. Like I thought Ferguson would be leveraged, but maybe I'm wrong in terms of my ownership. Like my individual stuff, I just average stuff out. Yeah, did you say Pollard was a good leverage play, Tides there? Or Pollard's going to be chalky?
Pollard's he's popular.
Pollard's going to be very chalky. Yeah.
He's cash game playable. Like you're not forcing yourself to play Pollard.
Right.
He's another guy, by the way, we're kind of waiting for. Go ahead, Tim. Give your thoughts.
That's the guy. That's the next guy I would have added into that cash game team. But again, it's hard to play Pollard. And then you'll have like no high end wide receivers at all if you add Pollard to that cash build that we have on the screen. So, but I mean, Pollard is definitely cash game viable, 100%. So if people want to go that route over Kamara or whoever else, I think that's completely fine. But I do prefer Kamara straight up over Pollard.
We'll get a refresh. Obviously, ownership right now is as of 8:40 in the morning. Things will change as more news comes in. Breece Hall, the most popular running back, specific to DK. He just seems too cheap there versus the Giants at 5.9K, getting 30% in large field. Probably the first running back you're throwing in your cash lineup on DK. I know Tim mentioned Kamara. Pollard is third at 20%. Kamara also getting 20%. Pacheco getting 20% there versus Denver. Taylor at 16%. You know how you guys were talking about, you're sort of hoping that Mike Thomas plays and you think Shaheed's going to be push down his ownership a little bit. I'm kind of hoping that, Zach Moss, gives it a go and is cleared. And, I like Taylor as is. I think Taylor is perfectly fine. And I think there's, if Moss doesn't play, of course, he'll get a little bit more, but he'll get more ownership as well. But I think there's still a path to him getting 20, 25 touches here versus the Saints, even if Moss goes. We talked about how many plays that Indianapolis does run. And I still think eventually he's going to, the share is going to become more and more in favor of Taylor. Theoretically, I don't know when it's going to happen necessarily, but he's going to separate himself a little bit more. I know Moss has been good and good for him. But, Bobby, you have a thought on that as far as Taylor? I kind of want Moss to play for my tournament shares of Taylor, which I think will keep his ownership down in check, I guess we can say. Your thoughts as far as Taylor and Moss, that backfield for Indianapolis?
Yeah, if Taylor gets the workload that he's trending towards, he should probably be $1,500 to $2K more expensive. I know the spot isn't the greatest versus the Saints. It has been loosening up a bit. So yeah, I don't mind Taylor. I would rather Moss in just to get my exposure there. I was wondering about Pacheco. I was under the impression that Pacheco was going to be the third running back or so in cash, and not Kamara. So I'm wondering.
He's right there.
Yeah, he's right there. What are the deficiencies you see in Pacheco? Not to put him in your on your cash game team. He is
Kamara. I like Breece Hall a lot more. I like Kamara a lot more. I would even go as far to say I like Jonathan Taylor more. I clearly like Tony Pollard more. They're just guys. He just falls off the list for me. I think there are better plays than Pacheco. If people want to play him in cash, I don't think it's bad. If you want to play him in tournaments, I don't think that's bad either. He is going to be pretty popular for tournaments, currently at 19.5%. So, I mean, he is going to be highly owned. But in terms of cash games, they're just guys, just gets kind of squeezed out for me.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing this in chat. Not even to cut you off, Bobby, but if you're having an issue as far as the stream, just give it a refresh. I guess it's acting goofy for some people out there. Apparently, according to the chat, just hit the old refresh button and we're going to be good to go. Oh, I did ask. I got some answers for my question, by the way. And tell me, guys, when you're excited about hearing some of these names. I asked earlier, give me some of your favorite cheap receivers on DK, like 4-3 or less. Wan'Dale Robinson. Who's excited about Wan'Dale Robinson? Anybody?
He would definitely be on the list at 4K or less. He's probably right up there with Gallup for me.
Yeah, I don't see him having a ceiling, though, is kind of the issue. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's going to break the 70-yarder. Curtis Samuel, okay, sure. Powell for cash. That's interesting. Have you considered Powell for cash, Tim?
I have not.
I would not play Powell. And the only reason Powell got there the other night was because Addison went out. I actually like Addison in tournaments. He's at the same price as Zay Flowers. But the only reason Powell got there was in the one drive span of Addison being in the game, or being out of the game in the fourth quarter the other night on the Island game.
Yeah, he ended up with 5 targets. He caught 4 of those balls, and yeah, I don't love it.
I know he knocked me out of first place in Showdown, and I was very upset.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is there anything worse than tilting Showdown? But when do you actually get excited? I'm curious. Not to regale this terrible story for you. At what point do you get excited about, oh, I'm in first place in Showdown? Like 4 minutes to go, 3 minutes to go? What is it? When is it you actually like this? When does the sweat start?
Well, I had like 30% Cam Akers. It probably like a minute or 2 minutes left, but I had so I had a lot of real strong Cam Akers team who was at the same price as Powell. So after Powell caught those balls, I knew I was in trouble, and that was when I just fell asleep.
And it's just fractions. It's fractions and it's yards. Like just like a couple yards and a couple fractions, and it can plummet you from winning $1 million or like 500K, whatever it is, to like 2,000 or something like that. And then like you end up profiting $1,000 and you're like bummed. It's like, man, tonight sucked.
What about Noah Brown? Obviously not for cash, but for large field GPPs. Like people are that game is going to be really good for tournaments, and he's the stone mint. I think he's interesting. Projected for 2.5 catches, 31 yards. Stone mint. I think he's interesting for tournaments.
I really like the Houston passing offense today. Woods is done for a couple weeks. But I mean, I like Collins and Dell first, obviously.
Of course. I'm talking more like Millie Maker type stuff. But yeah.
I don't think that's crazy. I don't think it's crazy
either.
What team is Noah Brown on?
He's on Houston. He's the third receiver for Houston now that Woods is out.
I didn't know that. I really like Houston's passing game today. Everything kind of checks out. So
yeah, narrative game as well.
In single entry, I want to like get to it like a stack of that game. I'm not quite sure.
Broccoli Boy in chat reminded me that I don't have my coffee. Do you guys mind if I get up and grab it real quick?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Yeah, so
I like that game a lot too. The Houston Carolina game, fun narrative. Obviously, the two rookie quarterbacks, Stroud versus Young. Carolina, they seem kind of split, or like the coach kind of hinted at, or basically Young wasn't their guy. It probably was Stroud. Carolina picked Young over Stroud. Stroud looks awesome this season. The tricky thing for me is Carolina is like, I mean, I don't know if it's tricky or not. Maybe it's super obvious. Like, who's the run back? The run back, the clear and obvious one, I guess, is Adam Thielen. Just cover the name. But like, he's been spectacular if you look at the numbers. He's 6'6" on DK, and FanDuel is like 8'3", which is outrageous.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that on FanDuel. If he's on the aux pool on FanDuel, then I'm just like, I don't know. That's just insane how expensive he is on FanDuel. But I think
he's been good.
Yeah, the obvious run back would be Thielen. But I think who is it? Mango. The young wide receiver for Carolina.
I mean, Hayden Hurst, I don't think it's completely nuts.
No, I think it's nuts. That's a really good pivot off McBride too.
Yeah,
Hayden Hurst.
What'd you have as far as Hurst? I heard you say something.
So
I just think he's.
Let me do the deep dive on Hayden Hurstein.
Well, he's not McBride, but he's basically the same price. And is it so crazy to think that Hurst can outscore McBride? I don't think it is. And like, if you want the run back in this game, I think he's certainly worth.
I think you're actually probably right, but neither have any ceiling.
No, he's got nice locks.
I don't think Hurst has gone over like 50 yards in 2 years. I'm being dead serious.
In Atlanta, did he play? Didn't he have like a season-ending injury last year, if I'm not mistaken? Yeah. Look, this is not. I'm not going to die on Hurst Hill, to be very, very clear. But I just think he's, not completely nuts. If you want to run back in that game, we're talking about Noah Brown, right? I feel like we're right now. We've turned it like into the Squirrel and Beimfohr show. We're being super, super ambitious, I guess. But I'm looking for run backs in that game. Well, what is your thoughts as far as that game, Bobby? How do you feel about Houston, Carolina? There's not a ton of games that just sort of jump off the table and say, oh yeah, great stack. The Carolina side, like the obvious play is Thielen. I guess Hubbard isn't completely crazy if you think Hubbard's going to take away more from Sanders. I don't mind that, but not a lot going on the Carolina side. If you're stacking Houston, I guess you don't have to force the stack, the run back. Would you force a run back? And if so, who's your run back in Carolina?
Yeah, definitely don't have to force a run back from Carolina. I do like Hubbard. Thielen at 6'6", like the price is actually kind of warranted at this point. And we just keep looking
he's projected for almost 11 targets.
We keep looking to fade him when we should actually probably be playing him.
Right. I know.
It goes against like, yeah, everyone's looking for this like negative regression, but he still has more like salary that he could like eventually he could be a 7K receiver next week from 6-7 or 7-2 or 7-3 if he gets those 11 targets and has a good game. So yeah, maybe Thiel's just good. I definitely prefer Hubbard over Sanders. I will say in the Hubbard range, DeMercado at 4.8 for Arizona is a run back that I really like with the Baltimore stacks.
He's going to get some ownership on FanDuel. FanDuel can be pretty tight, and he's pretty cheap over there. I want to check the ownership. I know at least, let's see. At least I thought he was going to get some more. Only 5%. I thought it'd be more because he's really cheap. He's 5.6 on FanDuel, and FanDuel's hard to find salary savers as well. On DK, I don't think he's going to be that owned. 8% on DK at 4.8. Okay. Yeah, I don't mind that.
Last week.
Tim, what's your thoughts? Yeah, as far as Arizona in general, like if you like Lamar, Zay's right there, Flowers, that is. You can play Andrews if you want. I saw some people in the chat who we were talking about with Beckham. Somebody mentioned Beckham as a potential cheapie, for Arizona. You're looking to save some salary. He is 3.8, and then somebody else mentioned Aguilar. Yeah, if you stay away, all the receivers for Baltimore, with the exception of Andrews, are super, super cheap. Flowers in the mids here at 5.6, Bateman at 3.3. Like you can't feel good about that, but he can catch a long one. Beckham at 3.8, Aguilar at 3.4. I'm not going to mention Duvernay, but like theoretically, I guess maybe, but not really. Yeah, what do you got there, Tim? As far as that game in general, 4:00 game there. Baltimore is a pretty big favorite, 10-point favorite. This might be Dobbs' last start. Who knows? We'll see when it comes to Murray coming back at some point. He is practicing. Yeah, how are you handling that game, Tim? I know you mentioned Houston and Carolina. How do you feel about Baltimore, Arizona? Because I think it's going to be one of the more popular ones on the board for several reasons.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think one way to get different with that game would maybe do a Lamar double. I think maybe people will just pair him with like Andrews or Flowers, but maybe going with a Baltimore double with like a Marquise Brown run back as a way to maybe stack it a little bit differently. DeMercado is completely fine. I'm not sure if he has quite the ceiling. For me, I prefer to try to chase Marquise Brown because we know that he can break off big plays. So I think he would be my preferred run back. But yeah, obviously it's an amazing spot for Baltimore. We got a couple questions in the chat. If you could play Lamar naked in GPPs, I don't think so. I think you have to pair him with somebody just to hit a ceiling for large field. Maybe in like a smaller field you can play him naked, but I don't think so. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
He can run a couple in. But Bobby, what's your thought as far as Lamar naked?
I think that question is always context based on the size of field that you're playing. I don't think a naked quarterback is going to win a large field tournament, but in small field stuff, I think it's fine. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Tim, is Bodyguard's asking, is it a 3 running back today in cash day?
Yeah,
I think so. I think it's 3 running backs in cash today.
I'm pretty confident in that.
I have another DK cash question for you. And again, fire off your questions there in chat. By all means, happy to get those. DK cash, I don't know if you're going to like this build here, Tim. This is a 2v2. It's Pollard and Dell versus CMC and Gallup, if not Gallup, Douglas. So, I mean, we love CMC. Who doesn't love CMC? But just he doesn't really fit cash game builds. I know, like, it sounds like it's, of course, you want CMC, but just I was messing around with some builds of them as well, too. And this is a problem. You know, with Gallup or Douglas, and their floor is like 3, maybe 2, maybe 1.
Right.
Yeah. So Pollard and Dell versus CMC and Gallup, if not Gallup, Douglas.
It's definitely Pollard Dell for me in cash.
Would you play Dell in cash over? Let me jump back to the other 5K receivers. Because I'm trying to think. Like Johnson is really cheap. And I'm not saying you have to play Deontay Johnson, but I think he's interesting at 5K. Dell is 4.9. Okay, so I guess they don't have the salary. One of my favorites, by the way, just throwing it out there. I'm curious if you guys have a thought. I'm curious, but Philadelphia versus Washington. Love that Philly offense. One of my favorite run backs today, Bobby, is Terry McLaurin in that 5K area. We've seen him rise of late as far as his targets. Washington throws the ball a ton. They're probably going to be down today. McLaurin's been separating himself more so of late. It was much flatter earlier in the year. Maybe he was dealing with was a turf toe or something like that. Maybe that injury has essentially gone away. But McLaurin's one of my favorite players in the 5K area, and there's a slew of them. I'm curious if you have a take. I love Nico Collins at 5'5". Obviously, Zay Flowers at 5'6" is probably your cash game guy. So maybe you can get away with him. Get away from him in tournaments with these kind of guys. But yeah, give me a take on McLaurin.
Yeah, I like McLaurin. Targets have been up. Samuel too. Samuel is questionable too. Is that correct? Or
yeah, I don't know if he's like questionable. I think he's officially questionable with I think it's a foot, but I don't believe he's missed a game all season long. He'll also give the occasional run, which is nice. Sometimes they'll give him a carry at the goal line, which is a little bit of added value there for Samuel. But he's also cheaper at 4.2. But I think Terry's like my favorite guy on Washington. But
so one thing about Samuel that I like is his targets are over the middle, which is more conducive to like fantasy points or like ceiling situations. If you get like deep passes over the middle rather than outside stuff, and Philly gets absolutely crushed over the middle. I know Philly has they just got that new safety though, Byard from Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, like, I don't mind the Washington stack. I just think Howell's going to get annihilated in this game. Like the Eagles defense, the front seven is going to put him like in the dirt multiple times today. That's why the price is 4.3 on DK for the Eagles.
Are you paying it?
No, I never pay up for defense. They're in my player pool. Like I boosted them, obviously. I just don't know how I actually get. Like I doubt they'll hit any of my teams. Yeah, it's just a really good spot for. That's why I hate playing receivers where I question what the ceiling is for their quarterback. Even though they're kind of correlated, but they could be two separate things, I guess. Yeah, you talk about Flowers as a fade at 5'6", and I think it's interesting. Like there are a ton of guys from Bourne at 4.7 up to Kirk at 5'9" in that salary range that I think could possibly not. I don't think Bourne is actually a play for me, but I'm just saying like people would consider Bourne a play based on projections this week. I would prefer stopping it at Downs at 4.8. I think Downs is a very strong play, but I think a lot of these guys can actually beat Zay. Zay's ADOT's very low, right? Like what's his actual ceiling? And I think a lot of these guys around him have greater ceiling. So when everyone's trying to fade McBride, I think the guy you should be trying to fade is Zay.
Question for you, Bobby. You mentioned earlier, you kind of snuck it in, and for somehow me and Tim, we didn't really pick up on it. You're talking about Mac Jones, playing Mac Jones possibly. I mean, I assume the thought process is, on the comeback here versus Miami, chucking a fair bit. And Miami's defense is not spectacular. And I'm also curious, I think you snuck in Douglas as well. Is that what you're talking about? If I was hearing you correctly. We've seen Douglas kind of rise of late. We've seen Bourne rise as well. Part of that is because of the absence of Juju. Is Juju going to be back? And if he is back, does he get his spot back right away? Like what? Just kick him out. Like what he's not part of your future, and he wasn't good when he was in there. I don't understand that, but I feel like Bourne has earned himself some run as well as Douglas. Talking about that situation, that's your team, and I think you were saying, if I was hearing you, you like Mac Jones paired with Demario Douglas.
Yeah, I like Douglas a good bit. What I can say about Douglas is he basically in the Island game, he was getting more snaps than Juju in the spot with a fully healthy Juju. We know how bad Juju has been. And then he ended up losing snaps because he fumbled and Bill took him out of the game after the second quarter. Like he didn't see the field again. So if people are going to think that Juju's going to come back and play more, it was actually because he fumbled. And his snap should be ramped up. Like he played great last week. I would be boosting Douglas a little bit. And I don't know, maybe if the Juju thing wasn't in question, Douglas would project better for cash games. I'm not saying he'd be like a a free square in cash, but I think he'd be somewhat of a fringe play, I guess, or more of a fringe play if you did out like the snaps and what his projections could be based on how he's been trending. I really like Douglas.
But it looks like Jalen Ramsey's going to be back today, making his debut for Miami for what it's worth. I'm not saying you necessarily have to run away, but he should improve that defense. You have a take on that, Tim? I know we're talking about Tyreek. Tyreek's super expensive. One way to make him work is to run him back with Douglas. Instead of like 2 5-ish, 6-ish K receivers, you have one all the way up top, one down below, and they're basically, a 2v2. Is that something you have interest in? Did Bobby sell you on Demario Douglas? Assuming it doesn't fumble, I guess he can stay on the field, which is the dumbest, who am I to tell Belichick how to coach football? But like, he's not trying to fumble out there. Why would you bench him?
You tell all the coaches how to coach, Dean, in every sport. You have no bias or filter when it comes to that.
Just the basic concept of like, oh, you fumbled the ball here, so now we just punish you and the rest of the team going forward. It's like,
Dean, you'd be great as like a sideline timeout guy.
Oh, I can call timeouts best in the business. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, without question.
I honestly think this could be your calling, is being a sideline timeout guy.
It's like really niche. It's really niche.
Immediately.
What about the challenge guy? You got to be able to see a play really, really quickly.
The challenge too, yeah. With those glasses, you couldn't miss it.
Hey, I'm okay moonlighting with a second profession. Sure, why not? Look. Obviously, I don't know more than Belichick, and I hate to be that guy that makes. I'm just sitting there watching Red Zone with everybody else, but it's just strange to me that like, oh well, you fumbled this one time.
Hate to be that guy. That's the biggest crocker.
You're saying I love being that guy.
Show. You love being that guy. That is you. That is.
There's no responsibility being there. That guy. You just sit there and play the results. It's like, whoa, this is what you should have done.
Yeah.
It's like,
So
Bobby, that play didn't work out.
Bobby, why don't you like Kendrick Bourne? Because I think he's fringe cash game viable, and I think he's certainly a great run back with a Tyreek build.
Yeah, I don't hate Bourne. I just don't like. I'd rather play Downs. I think Bourne's fine for cash too. That's why I ended on Bourne, because I know projections love Bourne. They're in a pace up spot. I like Bourne. I'm one of those people that is like a Bourne. I like Bourne more than the industry, I would say. But I think there's guys in that range. Dell Downs is in that range. What's Dell's price?
49.
Yeah, I don't hate Bourne at all. I bumped his projection. Yeah. I feel like I bumped everyone's projection last night. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah, I do agree with you that like high 4, low 5 range is pretty loaded. I just, he's showing up at like 9% of optimals. He's only going to be 7% owned, so you do get some positive leverage with Bourne. So I really like him in all formats, and I would definitely include Tyreek in that kind of build, because I'm sure the Patriots are going to be playing quite a bit of catch up. So I like Bourne quite a bit. But yeah, Douglas is fine in larger field. But yeah, I would definitely prefer Bourne.
Do we care about like the narrative that Belichick, shuts down the team's best weapon on the other side? One of Hill's worst games this season was against New England earlier this year, where he had just 15 fantasy points. He caught 5 of 9 passes, 9 balls thrown his way for 40 yards. He did get in the box. Just asking, is that a thing, Bobby? I guess obviously Tyreek can crush anybody, and to just think, well, yeah, there's not just a button you push. Oh, we're going to stop that guy. Push button, doesn't work that way. But do you care about that, I guess, is what I'm asking.
I think it matters. Waddle is my favorite play on the slate for that reason. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
7-5 Waddle, 500 down from Brown at 8K, who Dean says is going to be chalk, or 600 down from Chase at 8-1. I really love Waddle. He's killed the Patriots in the past. I could see it being a 2-touchdown day for Waddle today. So, yeah, he's my favorite Miami run back.
For what it's worth, and probably not a lot, but Waddle wasn't great in that game either. He caught 4 of 6 passes for 86 yards. I don't remember that game. When did that game? Was that like a Monday night game?
Waddle's on the uptrend, and Waddle got hurt in that game too because he was like my highest owned captain. I think he had like this. He almost broke a screen to the end zone and then got hurt on the screen on that same screen play and basically hobbled.
It was
around.
like a showdown game, right? Is that it was a showdown game? Okay,
Yeah.
I thought it was off the main slate. Okay, that was all the way back in week 2. I can't remember last week sometimes. But,
Waddle has back issues, is what they said in chat, which they're right. Yeah, he is a little banged up.
Shannon says, Will Levis anyone? Like, no. I mean, I don't come on. We're not playing Will Levis. This is not. He's 4-4 on DK. Besides being, Will Levis and attached to that terrible Tennessee offense, there's also, rumors that Willis is going to have a package also. Like, he's going to come in for some stuff. So, like, I don't want to be attached to a terrible Tennessee offense with a terrible, I don't want to say terrible quarterback because they've never been given a chance. But, yeah, I mean, Bobby, we're not deep brain stuff, sure. It's a fun conversation, but there's no way Levis is, like, worth rostering today, is there? I can't imagine. Clip this when, he scores 4 touchdowns.
So I think Levis makes Bijan and the Atlanta defense worth rostering. I think Bijan it's a get-right spot, not versus Tennessee's run defense, but just in general, very good flop lag spot for Bijan. The same price range of all these chalk running backs, Breece Hall, all the 6K guys, Pacheco, Jonathan Taylor, like we hit on. So yeah, I'm going to be over on Bijan. Just going to give them short fields. Not that I think he's going to throw a ton, or I don't know. They're going to try to run it, but I feel like they'll just stack the box. It's just going to be a lot of like shorter fields for Atlanta. You'll definitely see some goal line stuff at 6K. So what's Bijan down from, like 8-1 from week 1? Like
so he was 7-3 last week. He started the season at like you said, 8K on DK, and just progressively has gone down and down and down and down. And certainly the player prop world, he shook it up last week. They did not, they did not report that Bijan wasn't feeling well. Was never reported, and he took a carry with like less than a minute left to go in the game for some reason. He was on the field, before that, for what it's worth. Like, people thought he was never on the field at all for a couple plays here and there. But just the whole fiasco. And I guess DK was kind of overreactive. Not the great landing spot here against Tennessee, but he can certainly catch a bunch of passes. Hey, Bobby, since we're on Miami, Donnie's talking about Mostert. Mostert, he's dealing with an ankle. Do we think, is it possible Jeff Wilson can kind of break loose? Is that possibly a thing? At the start of the season, Jeff Wilson was, 1A as far as the running backs there in Miami. Of course, he started the season on the IL. I know he was in the showdown slate and kind of tanked. All the Miami running backs tanked last time. But can you tell yourself a story as far as Jeff Wilson being a thing today at 4-5? Or not really?
Not really. I know the best ball touts like Overzet and what's his name, the guy with the long hair there that does one of our shows. They were on Jeff Wilson. What I think Ahmed is the guy at 4-6 who's going to be the secondary running back. A couple weeks back were a tackle. They basically, when Jeff Wilson came back, they got a tackle in for Jeff Wilson as a healthy scratch. And it seems like it would indicate that Ahmed is going to be the second string running back there. Even last week, you didn't see a ton of snaps. So yeah, I think it's Ahmed. I think you play Ahmed in larger field tournaments too. Like they rely so much on the ground game. This Dolphins team, we've seen 2 Miami Dolphins running backs be optimal. Not that Ahmed is definitely on chain. I'm not saying that at all. But I do think that he could get in the box today. I wonder what his touchdown prop is. That would be an interesting long shot touchdown prop.
Is the guy with the long hair Davis Maddock? It just popped in my head. I was like, who's the guy with the long hair? Yeah. The whole time, who is he talking about?
I had his name blanked. They were like making fun of me in this draft we did, and I was crushing. I think I'm crushing them, or I was when I looked.
Take that victory lap. Let them know on Twitter.
Victory lap that week 8.
Davis, aka the guy with the long hair.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just I think the running backs are in play, but Mostert too at 7-7. Like I don't know. People aren't going to play Mostert. He's going to be 1%. Like Mostert's the type of running back that absolutely destroys this Patriots team. We see it on the showdown slate. You run outside. Their linebackers are too slow. Yeah, I don't know. I think that everyone from Miami is in play. They have their team total is 2 points higher than anyone else on the slate. Like, no one's gonna play Tua. Just play Miami.
Yeah, Tua is going
Make
to
sure
be
you have
so
some
low
Miami
owned.
stacks.
Yeah, Tua is going to be extremely low owned. Like getting to like Waddle, like Bobby said, Tua. I think those are really, really strong GPP plays, large field. Like Tua is showing up at like 4%, 5% right now. So I mean, and they should handle the Patriots really easily. They're going to put up points. So is it going to be Mostert or is it going to be like Tua, Waddle, Tua Hill? I'm not sure, but getting exposure to this game, I think, is very, very important if you're building out, more than, 5-10 teams.
The best thing that happened to those Dolphins stacks a couple weeks ago, remember they were down 14-0 early, and it's like, oh my God, you're just beautiful. There's nothing better in your team, the team, the offense you stack that you trust is going to score some points to be down 14-0 early. I think they responded with like 35 straight against Carolina. Some questions here in chat I want to get to. Keep firing them off. If I missed yours, my apologies. I scrolled past them. Feel free to ask them again. King is asking about Mixon at that price. I think we're all kind of done with Mixon. I mean, and also like just too many other just better plays.
He has to beat a lot of guys in that same price area. That's the issue with him. I'm not necessarily done with Mixon, but on this slate at that price point, it's pretty loaded. So he's going to have to beat a lot of better players, I think.
Tough opponent too,
Should we do the deep dive on Mixon?
Do you want to do it? I feel like you're not a Mixon fan.
I'm looking into it right now. Mixon.
I don't think people are just done with him. And like Mixon, Tim said, the other part.
Do not play Mixon.
Was that the deep dive?
That was a Bobby deep dive that we just saw live on air. Wow, that's pretty deep. He's actually, and the other thing is Mixon's showing up 9% owned, which I thought was pretty high. I thought it'd be lower than that.
Why do people projections just love Mixon, huh? Like at some point their running backs loaded. Like I don't think this is the week to be going to Mixon personally, but I don't know.
It's just because he gets so many attempts. That's why. I mean, I think
attempts to run 1 yard.
I know.
He runs into
I'll throw out a guy by
falls down. He has the worst vision I've ever seen. Like he needs Dean's glasses to see a hole. Like that's the only way he's seeing a hole at this point.
I'm just gonna throw out a name that, like, people love the old flop flag. Heavily owned last week. Not gonna get played this week. I understand why. Kenneth Walker the third. Is anybody ballsy enough to go back to Kenneth Walker? Because he's a home run hitter, and that's what we care about in DFS, right? But also he's facing a Cleveland team, a tough Cleveland defense, but, home favorite. Some potential weather also, because it is Seattle, right? There's always potential weather. At least there was. I guess there's not. Okay, I thought earlier in the week there was. And I'm checking Ross report, and there's nothing on there as far as Seattle. You get into some Walker, Tim, but it's not that he's cheap, but, you're just getting yourself some you're getting off the popular guys as far as running back. But there's absolutely a world where Walker is the top running back this week, I think. I don't know if I'm getting there, but I just thought it was an interesting name that's just going to get no ownership.
Yeah,
basically.
I don't think I'm going to get there this week. I just have too much respect for Cleveland overall. So I'm just not going to bother going there. I'd just rather go up a little bit higher or a little bit lower in terms of my spends at running back. I guess it is possible that he could be a smash play this week, but I find it pretty unlikely.
Michael in chat says, what do y'all think about Wilson on the Jets? No one's talking about the Giants and Jets game. Well, I mean, one of the reasons why we're not talking about it is because the total is like 35.5, right? Has it gone up or gone down since the last time I saw it? Yeah, 35.5 total. A few passing showers there for what it's worth as well. We do like Brees Hall. We like Brees Hall a good bit. I think Garrett Wilson is interesting leverage off of Brees Hall. Obviously, Zach Wilson's got to throw him the ball, but I think a lot of us respect Wilson as being a talented receiver. He's also like more expensive than that whole 5K group, so like he's not going to get a ton of ownership, Bobby. Garrett Wilson, and like the run back for the Giants is who, if there is one. You don't have to, but your thoughts as far as Wilson or just that game in general, because it's mostly neglected outside of Hall.
So the Giants defense blitzes at pretty much the highest rate of the league, and Wilson looks very good in that situation. So I don't mind him. He's also gets a lot of first read targets. I think he's good leverage off of Hall. I also like if Hall's going to be 30% owned, just looking, maybe he's someone else. Like I think Hall's a great play. I love Hall. Don't get me wrong. He's probably my favorite running back in the league, but he's someone I could get away from too. It's got to be one of him or Zay Flowers that isn't going to get there today. Just you have so many guys in that range that could beat either one of them. Not that I'm fading either of these guys, but I'll probably be, I don't know, under the field, I guess, on one of them. Yeah, there's a lot of guys in that range that I like from the running back and wide receiver position.
Okay. By the way, there's another question for you. I'm going to fire off in a second from chat. If you're asking questions, try to give us some context. Let us know if you're playing cash, you're playing tournaments, you're playing on FanDuel, you're playing on DK. That kind of stuff does help. I have no context beyond this. Jacob is asking, Bobby, Bijan Robinson or John Taylor? In the old vacuum in the Hoover, who do you prefer?
I like both a lot. Who am I getting more of? I'm getting more of Taylor right now, but it's slight. It's very getting more Taylor currently. So I'd go Taylor.
You got a take on that, Tim? Bijan versus Taylor, strong lean?
I like Taylor quite a bit more.
Let's see. We kind of touched on this earlier. Let's kind of rehash. Let's kind of circle back around. I know there's some new people joining the show as the show progresses. Bobby, give me your favorite receiver, and Tim, think of one as well. Bobby, your favorite receiver under 5K. 5K and under on DK.
Rashid Shaheed.
All right. What is he, like 3'8", 3'9"? I haven't looked at him, but I think he's
3'9".
Okay. Yeah, it sounds about right. What do you got, Tim?
You said under 5K or
yeah, you got some wiggle room. You can work it.
I could have gone as other people. Yeah, you go.
It's probably it's between Kendrick Bourne and Josh Downs. I guess I like the Indy Saints game better, so I'd go Josh Downs.
My answer was going to be Downs as well. Let me just ask this: your favorite 5K receiver, Tim? Like favorite receiver, and I don't want Zay. Give me somebody else. Let's give me somebody like that's 5 to 5'9". We're waiting for Ridley to do some things. Higgins is another guy that like nobody's going to play, but it's an interesting way to get away from Chase, and he's supposed to be healthy as well. But Christian Kirk versus Pittsburgh, perfectly one of those Jacksonville receivers to get there theoretically. There's so many.
So I guess probably Nico Collins, just because I love that Houston passing attack so much. That'd probably be my answer.
I love that answer. If it wasn't for Scary Terry, but Scary Terry on Halloween weekend, come on, how do you not go with Scary Terry? He's my favorite guy in the 5K zone. But I love, all things considered. I'm factoring ownership as well. Bobby, what do you got for me as far as that 5K receiver zone? There's a lot. There's a ton of options. Who is your favorite?
I like Collins a good bit too. Who else? I don't know. There's a bunch. Probably Addison.
Yeah.
Not just to go again, not say Collins, I guess. That's literally why I said Addison. Just not like Collins is the guy I'm getting a ton of. But just not to say like Kirk's there as well. Ridley, that range is loaded. That's why I'm saying like it becomes very easy to go down on Zay and drop his projection a little bit and just see where he's hitting, because is he going to beat all these guys? I don't know.
Probably not. He's probably not the leader in the clubhouse amongst all the 5K guys. And it also makes it easy. And as much as you don't want to do it, it's easy to like not play, one of the upper echelon, like the 8K, 9K receivers. But you mentioned Addison, Bobby. I'm about the never again guy. I hate being like overreactive, never again. But like Christian Watson, like he had the perfect spot last week at Denver, did nothing. Jordan Love kind of stinks, right? Is it just not going to happen for Christian Watson? I know you're Bobby Best Ball. Christian Watson was one of those guys that really worked his way up those best ball streets. Fourth round, I think, as we're closing in the season. Obviously, he's been injured and just not good. Is it ever going to happen? Can it happen this week for Watson? Because he's, I've had it. I've had it with him. Anytime I play him, it just doesn't work out for me. But
it's good. It's good sentiment to try to get him and get to play him, right? Like if everyone's kind of off him at this point. I think the Surtain matchup was probably more difficult than people realized last week.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think you can kind of go back to I bumped this projection. I don't know if he's going to hit, but I like Watson. I would prefer Addison. But Watson is 5'1", and he can definitely take the cover off of defense. So, for tournaments, he's like the perfect DFS wide receiver, I would say.
No context here. Actually, this is a cash question for you, Tim, from Jeff. Jeff Henry. Couple receivers we haven't talked about for cash, to be honest. Myers or London. Yeah, I don't. Well, wait a second. Myers is that's Monday night, right? Wait, isn't Myers? He's about Jacoby Myers. Isn't the Raiders are playing Monday night? What slate are we talking about?
Yeah, the Raiders play Monday night.
It's a season. Kirk D's takes those around 12:55 if you DM him.
No, Dean is the king of season long. So I mean, ask all of your season long questions to Dean, please.
But again, it's specified in cash, so that's what's confusing me. And maybe they're playing the Thursday to Monday slate, and I have no clue how much Myers is. But I know they're in Detroit. That's all I can tell you. But I would just say London is not a great option. He's 5'1", he's fine, I guess.
Yeah, and Myers is 6'2".
Oh, I'm confused by the question altogether. Happy to answer, but it just threw me off. Hey, how about this question from Peter? This is wild that this is a real question, but it's a real question, and I get it. Bobby, Jamar Chase, or Adam Thielen? It's a real question.
Yeah, I would go Chase. Thielen's. I was the one who said Thielen's probably worth this price tag. He probably has some more room to spare in terms of where he's. But the contrarian in me just wants Thielen to crash and burn too at the same time. So I'm gonna go Chase.
Don Yuzi wants to know our favorite game stacks. We've kind of touched on this as we've gone along, but Bobby, I'll let you go first. He's actually giving some examples: Cincinnati versus San Francisco, or Dallas versus the Rams. So if you want to give me your favorite and then pick your favorite amongst those two options, Cincinnati, San Fran, or Dallas and the Rams. You have a preference amongst those two, and who's your favorite?
So I wrote up the Cop CD Lamb bring back on Friday. I will say for stacks in general, I like Purdy, Jennings, and Kittle, or Purdy, McCaffrey, Jennings from the San Fran side, much more than the Cincy stuff. For the Cincy,
how much is Jennings?
3.3. I think Jennings is a really good play this week.
I haven't really thought about him, but okay, yeah, sure. The absence of Samuel. I thought Kittle might be a little interesting. He's just such a high variance guy, but theoretically he's got a bigger ceiling in the absence of Samuel. But okay.
Lip's back in chat. Lip, where were you all day? We didn't get Lip. It wasn't in here earlier in the show. Nice to see him.
It was making some Mark Levis, some Levis stacks, I think is what he was doing. I imagine. I don't know. And your favorite stack altogether? Did you give that as well or no? Or I think you did, right? I'm sorry. I apologize.
I don't know. I like this. I'm with Tim. I like Houston a good bit.
Tim, your favorite stack on the board is what? Game stack, I should specify.
It's between Houston, Carolina, and the Saints, Colts. I think both those games are so easy to stack. Between that question that we have between San Francisco, Cincy versus Los Angeles, Dallas, I like the Dallas game more. But that's just my personal preference. I think they're both fine. But for me, it's gonna be between Houston, Carolina, and Saints, Colts for my primary single entry team.
Saints Colts is kind of easy, right, as far as the auxiliary pieces. But when it comes to quarterback, I don't know what to do. Do you feel like you have to? Do you have a preference? Do you have like a strong lean? Like, is Minshew your guy? Is Carr your guy? Or it's just...
Minshew? I'm seriously considering playing Minshew in single entry today. Like,
I don't think
he's like top 5, like, you know, in the pool for sure.
He cares about your fantasy team. Like, he likes doing.
He does. He does. I don't know quite how to quantify that, but I feel like he really does care about my fantasy team.
He'll take a chance. He'll throw a couple of picks, but he'll also take a chance and just sort of go for it. He'll try to keep plays alive. I don't really want to pick on that New Orleans defense. They're pretty good, but which, like, I'm okay with the New Orleans defense, but I'm okay with Minshew as well. Speaking of defense, we have Bobby Gomes, defensive specialist here. David's got a question in chat. The Saints defense or Baltimore defense? Who do you prefer amongst those two?
Probably. I don't know. I would probably not play either. I would say Baltimore, I guess.
Demetrius wants to know Walker Jr. or Ramondre. It doesn't specify as far as salary. That feels like a season-long question to me. I don't know. Does it not feel like a season-long question? They have different salaries. I would take Walker amongst those two. Walker versus Ramondre Stevenson.
I would take Walker.
I would definitely take Walker.
Bobby, I got our defensive question for you. Ben wants to know your favorite low-cost defense for this week. I think when you consider salary and everything, Seattle is probably the most popular defense today. Is that what we're seeing? I think that's what we're seeing.
No, it's gonna be Atlanta.
Atlanta, yeah, picking on whatever nonsense that Houston's throwing out there.
And then I think Minnesota is gonna get some ownership also. And then Seattle. Seattle's definitely gonna be popular. Seattle's my favorite. I don't know, like, I don't like going over 3K usually in cash games anyway. In tournaments, you can do whatever you want at defense, but I think the Seahawks are my favorite defense in a vacuum.
Yeah, I'm just checking our ownership stuff, and I can give it a refresh as well. 18% to Atlanta just because of salary at 2.9K versus whatever the Tennessee. And by the way, I think that the Tennessee's rolling the old Houston Oilers uniforms out there today, which that was when I was a child. I was a Houston Oilers fan. I loved that uniform. So I don't know how the projections are going to adjust or not, but just an incredible uniform. Atlanta is 18%, Seattle 10%, Minnesota 9%. But let's give it a refresh. Let's see if anything has changed. Bobby, your thoughts as far as defense? You have a favorite cheap defense? Can we play New England? Is that something we can do? Like, defenses can still score like 15 points and give up 40 points. Like, we've seen that before. We saw it last week with Cleveland versus the Colts. They put up like at least 15 DK points and they got wrecked. Defensive scoring is kind of goofy, obviously. Give me your ambitious defenses or your cheap defenses, Bobby.
We actually have two 2K defenses with the Patriots and the Denver Broncos. Denver in the snow. I don't mind paying down. I think my favorite would be what's it called? The 2-5 defense there that everyone kind of likes. Who is it?
Vikings?
Yeah, the Vikings. They would probably be my favorite. So, yeah, that would be the one I'd be trying to get to.
Erik has jumped in chat. He wants to know about Sutton. How about Sutton? I'm not playing Cortland Sutton today. Does anybody want to give a Cortland Sutton sales pitch? All right, not everybody at once.
Not really. I mean, nope. I kind of like Jerry Jeudy a little bit more. If you wanted to get really creative and do a Denver run back, but I don't have that much interest in Denver.
Any love for Rice at 5K on DK? Speaking of that Kansas City game, everybody loves Kelsey. Kelsey's super, super expensive. The best receiver for Kansas City is probably Rashee Rice. His price has come up a little bit. Otherwise, it's just I saw somebody earlier mention Mecole Hardman, but like you can't. The floor on these guys is so rough. MVS and Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, and they just kind of shuffle in and out. Bobby, you like Rashee Rice as another one of those 5K receivers. He's going to be more ignored than most.
yeah, the weather there would just bring me off a lot of the passing game. And like you said, the floors for those guys and the ceilings for that matter aren't really the greatest. So no race for me.
All right, let's see. Yeah, Ricardo's asking you about New England defense. Yeah, you can play him at 2K. I mean, I wouldn't feel great about it, but let's see. Steelers defense. How do we feel about the Steelers defense today versus Jacksonville? Lawrence is going to play with what is he dealing with? I think he's wearing a brace or he's wearing something. He's dealing. I mean, he's going to be Steeler. I guess he's fine. I think he played last game with whatever subtle injury he had. I think Hurts is also wearing something too, or he's playing through a little something. I don't recall what it is. I think it's a leg, but he should be fine. I wonder if that Hurts is.
I think the Steelers have a lot of tournament merit because of the same price as the chalky Falcons. So if they beat the Falcons, then you're ahead on the field. So they're Steelers are going to be 1% owned versus 20% owned Atlanta.
All right, Bobby, Big Hurt wants to know FanDuel single entry Atlanta defense or Green Bay defense. This is for a single entry tournament on FanDuel. Let me pull up the ownership for those, see if they're close. Maybe you want to be different that way. Atlanta or Green Bay? Atlanta's going to be more popular. They're 3.9 on FanDuel. They're getting 13% ownership. Green Bay is, I got to scroll. Oh, they're just not going to be owned at all, like 1%. So I guess because they're essentially the same price as Atlanta, and people are going to take Atlanta over Green Bay because they project better. Your thoughts? And it's also in a single entry. We know how that people are just not going to take a chance with just one lineup and play Green Bay. But yeah, you have thoughts on that Green Bay versus Atlanta defense?
I would go Atlanta.
Several people have asked about Singletary. I think the expectation is that Pierce gets his job back more this week than he was taking like all the snaps earlier in the year, and then Singletary took a bite at him last time. But I think the expectation is that Pierce kind of bounces back and gets more than he was in the last game. He's cheap though, Singletary at 4.4. Is he in your pool, Bobby? Pierce is kind of cheap too at 5.3. So you might as well play Pierce, I guess. And he's not going to be popular either. But yeah, Houston running backs. I know the receivers, the passing game is going to, is warranting the conversation. We like Stroud, we like Collins, Tank Dell. What about the running backs here, Bobby?
I'm with my guy Erik on this one. I'd prefer. I don't love Singletary a ton, but I'd prefer him to Pierce. I think the coaching staff probably prefers Singletary to Pierce at this point too. And you're saving 900. So yeah, I would go Singletary.
Famous last words there. You're with your guy Erik. Are you with your guy Erik when he asked if it's a double?
Erik got some diamonds in the rough, team. Erik finds the diamonds. He's definitely in search. So I can trust Erik. You haven't seen Erik's list. I have. So
double tight end day for you, Bobby? I don't think so. It was last week. I think that one of the winning lineups was Andrews and Kelsey, who both smashed. I don't think I'm going double tight end.
I think double tight end could work, like depending how you feel about McBride at 2.6. So yeah, I don't mind it.
Let's see. All right. Question here in chats for Tim. Having the hardest time deciding between Tank Dell and Josh Downs in cash and single entry. Dell versus Downs. Dell coming back from his concussion. You have a preference there, Tim? I think your preference was Downs, if I was hearing you correctly before, but I think we like both.
I think it's Dell, but
oh,
it's super close. I don't know, because I responded to that question thinking it was just for cash. So it kind of depends on the rest of your lineup. I think like if you're going to be pairing, obviously if you've got Stroud, you got to go Dell. But it's pretty close between those two.
Look at you multitasking, answering questions in chat as well. Now I see you're answering. Bobby, they're asking if this is for large field stuff. 4 receivers, 3 running backs. Do you have any sort of preference, any sort of lean, or it's just sort of like your lineup dependent? Are you setting any sort of parameters? Cash is going to be 3 running backs.
Yeah, I'm checking right now. I just want to see what I got when I ran my stuff. My computer's being slow. Shoot. You
want me to come back to you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more wide receivers and tight ends for me. Definitely looking that way. Not a lot of running backs in the flex.
But Beantown says that Noah Brown's getting overlooked. He's their number 2. He's not their number 2, right? Collins and Dell is 1, 2, and then Brown's the third.
He's
guy.
He's their number 3, but I still like him for large field GPPs.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I saw number 2. I'm like, no, I think Brown is well behind Collins and Dell for what it's worth. About 10 minutes or so, 10 minutes away from getting Squirrel Patrol's takes. You got Erik Beimfohr as well. Later on, you get Brit Devine, TJ Zwarych, taking y'all straight up the lock. No reason to go anywhere else. Just going to get comfortable. 2 hours plus still before we get to kickoff. Also want to mention NBA. NBA's back. The NBA DFS is back. With that, the amazing suite of premium offerings we have here at RotoGrinders. For a limited time only, you can lock into a full season. Get yourself NBA Premium, $50 discounts. Everything from the lineup HQ tool, access to up-to-the-minute premium projections and ownership, and beyond. Like if news breaks during the slate, it's 7:05 or 7:10 for a game that's happening at 8:30 or so, projections will be changed. And if you're playing NBA DFS, you know anything about those streets, by all means, you know that you have to be locked in. You can't make any plans. You can't hang out with the family. You can't watch a movie. You got to be on top of stuff. Or turn on those notifications. Be ready for news to break. Also, the fantasy, if you're into like the prize pick streets, the underdog streets, things like that, the fantasy pick'em tool makes it very, very easy as far as showcasing what the best lines are for you. It literally will tell you, well, this one's got a 63% chance of being over or under. This one, there's a list. 70% chance sometimes if you catch it at the right time. By all means, get at it as far as the premium content. $50 discount. Check out the link that's currently in the description. By the way, we're doing basketball shows essentially every single day, usually 5 o'clock on the East Coast, taking you all straight up the lock. So feel free to join us for those. A couple more questions here in chat before we step aside. Oh, see, here you go. Your boy Eric's asking another question. I'll yield to you, Bobby. Is it a Kyle Pitts week?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Let's see. He's asking about Darren Waller. He says Darren Waller's going to smash.
Could be a Waller
I think it actually could be a Waller week.
Waller has a hamstring. That's the only issue. But I touted Waddle with a bad back, so
yeah, he's got 2 hamstrings, but one. It's the one that's really kind of troublesome. Kevin wants to know FanDuel cash, Tim. JT at the top of the list if Moss is ruled out. I still think you can play Thomas either way. Taylor, that is. But, obviously you would bump him up if Moss goes away.
So
it seems like
right now on
FanDuel,
it's Pollard, Hall, and Pacheco. So maybe you could take out Pacheco and add in Taylor for cash. I guess that's what I would do.
Tim, you got a hot take for the people?
So I've been looking at our stat level projections in RG, and been looking at, the amount of targets that certain, guys get overall in the slate. And I was stunned at who number 4 on the entire slate is in terms of targets. It really stunned me. And that is Adam Thielen. And he is 6,600. We have him, it's Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, and then Adam Thielen. So, yeah. And he's only $6,600. And so that really
he might still be discounted, which is wild. Like, it's so weird.
He is still discounted. Actually, he is. So
yeah. I mean, that's a really strong value. So I've been watching shows, throughout the week, kind of looking at stuff, and I just didn't realize how much target share this guy gets, and he's a bargain.
They did switch coordinators for what it's worth. I don't know.
They did.
Yeah. They have like a younger.
Yeah.
They brought it. Yeah. So I don't know if that's going to affect it. I'm just looking to poke holes at why his target share is as high as it is, and hoping that he doesn't continue it because I don't know how much I'm going to have.
So I'm going to play Thielen, Stroud, and 1 or 2 of Collins and Dell in my single entry contest. Is that what we're doing?
That's kind of where I'm leaning. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
But I'm
I'm
also thinking about Thielen for cash games, though, Dean, which I was not initially considering.
On
What would that
DK?
affect? What's the trickle down effect though? Because it's going to hurt you somewhere else. Is there
Right,
a 2v2?
That's what I got to figure out. You know what I mean? Like I'm not quite positive, but really, yeah. Like on DK, I think you could play Thielen in cash games.
Gus Edwards is a question. Yeah, that is the ultimate leverage play, but I just never play Gus Edwards. And if he gets in the end zone a couple times, whatever. Like I'm not happy, but I'll get my leverage elsewhere. He doesn't catch the ball, which is kind of a problem. Lamar also running in from the goal line. Are you getting any Gus, Bobby? And also, I want your hot take. Give me your hot take. See, Tim's and Ray's. Tim didn't officially give a hot take, by the way. He just said I like this guy. That wasn't an official take, I don't think.
Yeah, my hot take's going to be Jalen Waddle. I do worry about the back. Hopefully, we get some clearance, but yeah, I think he gets 2 touchdowns today.
Mine's, by the way, is going to be McLaurin. McLaurin is the run back if you're playing some Eagles. Just in general, I like Scary Terry versus Philadelphia today. I know that defense is good. I know Howell's going to get sacked a billion times, but eventually he's going to stand upright and throw the ball to Terry McLaurin. At Halloween weekend, Scary Terry gets over 100, gets in the box twice. Terry McLaurin is the best receiver in the 5K area. There you go. How about that? I was feeling ambitious. I was feeling bold.
Can you sell me more on McLaurin?
Say it again.
Can you sell me more on McLaurin?
Washington throws the ball a ton. I think they're going to be behind, and we might have Sam Howell drop back like 40 or 50 times. And the other thing, we talked about Minshew. Like Minshew cares about your fantasy teams. Sam Howell cares. He doesn't care about taking sacks. He tries to keep the play alive, and he gets sacked a ton. But the few times he's not getting sacked and he's scrambling around, he's making plays for better or worse. Like he's throwing a pick, he'll throw in the double coverage. He's trying to make things happen. Again, if he throws an interception, whatever. But if he gets sacked, there's just no chance for your receiver to do anything. But he will give his receiver McLaurin a chance. And I just think also Philadelphia is interesting. One of the better teams on the board. We don't really talk a ton about. And I like AJ Brown a good bit. Getting the Hurts is tough. I would like to get the Hurts, but Brown, what is it? 5 straight games now of 125 yards or more. If not, maybe it's 130 or so. His target share is like at 30% now. He's clearly separated himself. It was kind of him and Devontae Smith to start the season of 1-1A. He's the alpha. He's the man. He's the guy. AJ is him. Love him. And of course, there's other guys. His contemporaries are Jamar Chase and Kupp and Hill. But I think Brown keeps his streak alive, and McLaurin is my favorite run back on that side. Divisional game too. This game means a little bit more to Washington like the other ones do, I suppose. But that's what I got for you. Did I sell you on McLaurin? Did you have any McLaurin coming into the show? Will you have any coming out of the show?
I bumped him. I wasn't getting a ton. I'm going to bump him up now.
Yeah, I hear you. I get it. We got Erik and Squirrel coming in here momentarily. Tim, did you put an official number on your Houston take there? You just kind of said you like – or Thielen, I'm sorry. It just said you like Thielen. What was there an actual call? Is he going to get like 10 catches?
I'm gonna give him 8 and 100.
He kind of has to get that, doesn't he? that's not. I mean, come on. Let's be ambitious. 8 and 100.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's gonna be that high owned, Dean.
Okay, but if he gets 8 and 100, we're talking about that's 21 fantasy points.
Thielen in single entries, like the direct pivot off of like just getting to him over Flowers seems like the best play, I would say, right, Tim? Yeah, I'm seeing that too. Yeah.
Who are you talking about as being the direct pivot away from Flowers?
Thielen. Not like direct, but it's like for 1,300 more, or what is it? Not even. It's like 700, I guess. Well, how much is Flowers?
Flowers a little bit less. But I had a question before. I know that Squirrel and Ebeimfohr are coming here shortly, but somebody we haven't mentioned all show, Tim, and we've kind of hinted at this game several times, but for some reason we haven't talked about him, and probably because he's not in the 5K zone. But like, is this the day? Do we finally get a Chris Olave breakout?
That I was just gonna bring him up. We didn't say one word about him. Yeah. it's just tough because I like Kamara so much. So I don't know what to do with Olave. And I think that there's some merit that you could play Olave and Kamara on the same team. Just because, that is going to be the fastest paced game on the slate. So I think you could play both of them.
Yeah. I think Olave is pretty interesting. The off the field stuff is kind of, I assume it's not going to be an issue today, but just, Chris Olave is somebody that it had kind of circled that we have yet to talk about for whatever reason. You got anything on him, and Bobby, as far as Chris Olave and just that game environment? We like a good bit, but for whatever reason, we mentioned Shaheed, who's super cheap, and we're salary conscious here. But if you have the salary, how do you feel about Olave today?
Yeah, I like Olave a good bit. He's in that range of like fading flowers that I think's definitely viable. And yeah, it's the fastest paced game. So like Olave.
Taking a peek at the blitz, by a good bit as far as like almost like 2.5 plays as far as the projection of the old blitz game level factors. Shout out to Derek Carty. Do hit that like button, subscribe, turn those notifications, do all those things, and do say hello to Squirrel Patrol and Erik Beimfohr. Beimfohr, what's up? How are things in your world? Week 8. We're almost halfway home, which feels kind of weird.
It does feel weird. Finally seeing some light at the end of the tunnel from my world, the old best ball space. Been grinding these stupid drafts for months and months and months, and we're finally getting closer to the home stretch. But it is funny. Last week when we were coming on, you guys were talking about the Golden Bachelor and Real World Road Rules Challenge and all of that. And this week we're segueing in. I pop on right when you start talking about Chris Olave. He's one of my favorite plays today. You guys pretty much nailed it. I won't even have to add anything. Pivot, direct leverage off Kamara, pivot off of some of the other chalky wide receivers in that range, and an awesome matchup. And Michael Thomas is sick. I mean, Michael like ill. He's not sick as a play. He's like physically ill. He'll probably play, but yeah, love Olave. So a perfect segue into our show.
Do you think that you could play Kamara and Olave in the same team, Eric?
I think so. If the Saints fall behind, they're both going to get 15 targets. Right. I mean, it's not amazing at their prices, but I don't see why not.
So here's the next question: can you play Derek Carr with the two of
them? Plug your nose. Yeah, I don't love it, but we lost Sam Darnold, who was I was going to come on here and flag plant Sam Darnold, and we lost him. So I'm scrounging for a cheap quarterback there. He's probably going to throw it 40 plus times. You just need 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, I guess, which is a lot to ask from Derek Carr.
You just have to weigh the eyeshadow in the model, Yeah.
Right.
Hey, Eric, you mentioned being in the best ball streets earlier in the show. Bobby said, the guy that talks best ball, the guy he's an RG, the guy with the long hair. If I just told you the guy with the long hair, do you know who he's talking about? Instantly, immediately? No. He does an RG show on occasion, but the best ball streets is the clue. And he thought about the guy with the long hair. Who's that?
I'm blanking. Who even has long hair? Yeah. Oh, Davis. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about best ball. I knew immediately.
I would have thought.
He doesn't play DFS, he doesn't play DFS, right?
Yeah, I have no idea what Davis does anymore. His podcast is about crypto and business, and I can't figure out exactly what he's sinking his teeth into.
Yeah. All right, let's step aside. Let's yield. Let's get out of here. Let's have Beimfohr and Squirrel do their thing. We do appreciate y'all hanging out with us for the last hour and a half, and again, 2 more hours all the way up the lock. For myself, for Tim, for Bobby, for producer Steve. We thank you for watching the first portion. Now let's go ahead and yield to Squirrel and Eric. Eric, take it away. The guy with not a lot of hair, and Eric, I don't think you have a lot of hair either. I don't think so.
No.
All right.
Davis has more hair than John and I combined.
The no hair show. It's Erik Beimfohr. Take it away.
Awesome. Shout out Dean and of course Bobby and Tim, but Dean, the best hosts in the business. We are, of course, the GPP Final Takes here on RotoGrinders.com. As Dean mentioned, I'm Erik Beimfohr. I'm joined by John Breslin, a.k.a. Squirrel Patrol, a.k.a. one of the best DFS players on the planet. And, John, I'm pretty excited to get into this one. there are, of course, some injuries and notable situations we need to monitor, but it has felt like we've played this game for almost 2 months now, 7 weeks of NFL DFS, and every week we've come on and been like, this guy's out, and this guy's out, and that guy's out, and this guy's questionable. And this week, there are a couple, like I mentioned, but there's nothing like completely earth-shattering. Maybe Zach Moss, I guess, but he also said he intends to play this morning. Like, there's nothing super duper earth-shattering in terms of brand new injuries right after the pricing came out that like really shook up the slate. There are a lot of good plays, and that's I think why I like this slate is there's actually a bunch of games I'm intrigued by. Whether or not I think that they shoot out or not is a different story. There's a couple that stand out above the rest, but I think that there are just like a lot of guys who make for interesting plays. And for GPPs, for the GPP Final Takes show, I think there's a lot of guys that we can talk through and a lot of angles to take on this slate. I'm curious what has been your kind of first look and first thought about this one.
It's a pretty wide open slate. So we're back to 13 games after a couple weeks of like 10 games. So it's, I mean, if you think about it, that's like 30% bigger. Like there's 30% more quarterbacks, 30% more running backs. It almost feels like even bigger than that. A lot of times the past couple of weeks, I got to tag people in lineup HQ, right? And I'm like kind of struggling to find people to tag. This week, it was like, oh wow, like I'm just gonna click the guys I like, right? Like the guys that I want on Sunday to remember, like, oh yeah, I tagged this guy. I want to play him in a lot of my lineups. And I, before I know it, I had like 8-10 guys tagged. I'm like, oh, I gotta like actually pare this down a little bit. I start making choices. So instead of like struggling to find guys to play, really, I think we're like trying to make choices, which is good. I mean, it's a good way, to enter an NFL Sunday slate. So there's a lot of different games we can go to, but some do stick out above the rest. And it inevitably happens that like ownership consolidates. And like earlier this week, kind of like, well, I like Lamar Jackson, like Zay Flowers is a little bit underpriced. And now it's like, well, those guys might see like 20 and 40% ownership. So maybe I don't like them as much as I did.
Right. That is a great point. If you have not joined us on the show before, A, welcome. B, where have you been? And C, if you have any questions, comments, it can be anything. We will try to hit as many of the questions as we can. Drop them in the chat. Of course, we'll try to cycle them into the conversation that we're having, but we'll try to hit as many questions as we can. We are, of course, a little bit more of a tournament-focused show. So if you have a cash game question, we will try to answer it to the best of our ability. It will probably just be who projects higher. If you're a RotoGrinders subscriber, go look at the projections. We can help you with that. But we will not necessarily go game by game. We will not necessarily go position by position. What we're going to try to do is cover most of the kind of highlights of the slate, the biggest decision points that you need to make, the players that are sticking out to us the most, the game stacks, the ways to construct your team, all those different things we're going to try to touch on. We'll probably end up going a lot of game by game or position by position, but we'll kind of be bouncing around a little bit. And of course, answering your questions. And to Luis saying, please talk FanDuel. All content is overwhelmingly DK. We will try as best we can to hit both of those because I agree with you. I play a little bit more on DraftKings. My brain just like thinks in DraftKings. And so, but I agree. We don't want to leave our FanDuel people behind. I promise you, we will try to do as much FanDuel as we can. I do want to start with, and I say that, and now I'm going to start with one that is a very different discussion on both sites, but maybe that's a good thing. I actually want to start at quarterback this week because a lot of the weeks this year, and well, for me, the weeks that I've had success this year, I have been playing the cheap quarterbacks, right? I get on here and I make stupid jokes, but also I'm actually playing these guys about Desmond Ridder and Sam Howell and Brock Purdy and, Kenny Pickett and all these losers that are down there in the 5K range, right? But I've had most success getting those guys and then getting the superstars attached to the elite quarterbacks, but saving my $3,000 or whatever it is at quarterback on DraftKings. I'm talking now. On FanDuel, that is a very, very different conversation. Last week we talked about how Lamar Andrews was probably just go ahead and play it, even though it was going to be popular, and that worked out pretty well. But this week I'm really having a tough, it's a delicate balance because the elite quarterbacks have been in sometimes good spots, maybe not complete home run smash spots throughout the course of this season, which is allowed when Desmond Ridder scores 25. I can win tournaments, right? This week, we have Jalen Hurts against the Washington Commanders, who are one of the worst pass defenses and also a pass funnel, of which he lit up a couple of weeks ago. Now, granted, we'll talk about the weather as well later. We have Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs playing the Denver Broncos, who may have bounced back in the last couple of weeks, including against this Chiefs team. But I don't think anybody's expecting them to shut down the Chiefs or be an awesome defense for the rest of the year. And we have, the aforementioned Lamar Jackson in an absolute home run spot in Arizona in a dome against one of the worst defenses in the NFL. His weapons are all there. How are you handling the quarterback position? And if it's different between DraftKings and FanDuel, are there any cheapies that you like? Are you kind of sticking to the superstars, or what's been your approach thus far?
So I'm much more likely to play the cheap guys on DraftKings, just because quarterback scoring isn't that variant. Like a lot of it's just between 15 and 25. Sometimes you get guys, 35, 38, that starts to break the slate a little bit. Like last week we saw Mahomes and Lamar Jackson both, I think, got about 35 on DraftKings. So that separates them a little bit more. But it's really, if I'm looking at super cheap guys, I'm looking on DraftKings because the price list goes down a lot more on DraftKings. You'll get these 4,300. We didn't get 4,300 Sam Darnold, but we could have. And there's actually, looking at it, people were talking about Darnold's only 4,300, but that's only 1,000 less than Brock Purdy, who's the regular quarterback, right? And there's a bunch of guys you can play, like Sam Howell, Joshua Dobbs, Bryce Young, and Desmond Ridder, right around the low 5,000s. On FanDuel, that just does the pricing just doesn't go down that much. Generally, bottoms out around 6,000. Like Sam Darnold and Malik Willis, 6,100. I'm not going to be playing either of them, obviously, but that's just how far the pricing goes down. Also, the rushing yards and rushing touchdowns count a lot more on FanDuel relatively because there's no full point per reception. So that makes the pricier guys appealing as well. So it's a kind of multi-factor thing where it's the pricing, you're not saving that much money going with the really cheap quarterbacks. And also Lamar Jackson's, Jalen Hurts, when they get a rushing touchdown, when they get their consistent rushing yards, that actually counts for more points. So I'm way less likely to go down the pricing list on DraftKings than on FanDuel. On DraftKings though, when you're getting guys that are almost half the price of the really expensive quarterbacks, suddenly they're 20, if they get there, 25 points is starting to be pretty competitive as the top on the slate. If you're paying 8,400 from Mahomes and he gets 30, if you get Joe Burrow with 25, you'd probably rather have Joe Burrow and have the savings because you're saving $2,400. That's the difference between a top tier wide receiver and somebody in the mid range. I tend to go more with the lower guys on DraftKings if I'm going to go with them than the higher price guys on FanDuel.
Perfect breakdown. I think that's why my brain is broken. I play much more on DraftKings and that pricing. And I also think in particular this year, we don't always get a bunch of cheap appealing quarterbacks, or at least as appealing as we have this year, right? Say whatever you want about these guys as actual NFL players. You have to separate that. I understand. Yeah. Sometimes it goes hand in hand. Sometimes it doesn't. But the Howells and the Ridders, Purdy, like you mentioned, Purdy's probably my favorite today. Full transparency. He's currently in my DraftKings lineup. But Purdy is not a runner, but can run, can get you a handful of rushing points and can score a rushing touchdown, which is beneficial. But Howell is a runner, an actual runner. He can run for 50 plus yards and a touchdown. Ridder is an actual runner. He should have scored 2 rushing touchdowns a couple of weeks ago, but he's a dum-dum and he fumbled out of the back of the end zone. We don't always get those kinds of guys. I mean, even Kenny Pickett to a certain extent can run a little bit, right? Geno has been in the 5Ks most of this year. We just have a group where I think it was important to talk about that because my favorite quarterback on the slate, just like most everybody else, is Lamar Jackson. And on FanDuel, I may play Lamar Jackson because guess what? He's pretty awesome. And like you said, there's just so many less less other paths I can kind of take because of the pricing, because of the scoring, because of all that different stuff. Whereas on DraftKings, I'm going to be sitting here, I'm going to bring up Brock Purdy, and I'm going to bring up, Ritter, and I'm going to bring up all those guys. And I want to make sure that like Luis says, talking about FanDuel, make sure that we're separating, right? Like I don't think you should play Desmond Ritter on FanDuel. I'm saying that right now, but I'm going to talk probably a little bit highly about Desmond Ritter at some point during the show. Shocker. I know, right? We're probably 8 out of 8 on Desmond Ritter talk, but I do think that's a big decision, particularly on DraftKings. I think on FanDuel, it's a little bit more straightforward for me. It's kind of which one of the elites I'm taking, but on DraftKings, like I said, the success I've had, it happens to have been with Ritter and Howell, but like when one of them scores like 25, like you said, at like 5K, and the superstars outscore them, but like you said, the superstars are $3,000 more expensive. That's more than I spent on my tight end.
Right.
That's more than I spent. That
whole extra tight end you get.
Yes, I literally get a whole extra roster. Like I get a whole extra player basically, because and all I lost was 5 points, right, or 10 points maybe or something, and I got. And that whole extra player, what it really is, right, is the difference between Zay Flowers and Tyreek Hill or something like that. And that is a monster difference on DraftKings, especially on full PPR. On FanDuel, right, you're upgrading your tight end from Trey McBride to Hunter Henry or whatever. It's like it's literally not even an upgrade. And so that conversation, I wanted to have that today because I also think today it's even more important. Like we don't have backup running backs that are, super cheap on both sides. We have some value plays, of course, but we don't. It's a little bit more of a unique slate than we've had throughout the course of this season. Staying at quarterback, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the games and the stacks that are most important. Which one of the quarterbacks is it Lamar? Is it Hurts? Is it Mahomes? Where are you kind of sinking your teeth into the most at the quarterback position?
So I think for cash games, it's Lamar, but we're a GPP show. So he's my favorite quarterback going back the past few years in the NFL. I got one more with Lamar Jackson than any other quarterback. But he is passing a little bit more this year. I don't think you're crazy for playing Lamar Jackson in a GPP. I will definitely have some Lamar Jackson in GPPs. Some of my single entry will be Lamar Jackson. I think if you're doing Lamar Jackson, I would get away from the Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, was it Trey McBride combination, and don't pair that with the Falcons defense and the Seattle defense, or Seattle defense. You need to find somewhere to get different in your lineups, because that combination is just not that likely to hit. So I would maybe use a Demercado, use a Mark Andrews, try to mix it up a little bit, because I think that combination is going to be just very, very highly owned and just isn't as likely to hit as it is likely to be, in a lineup on DraftKings or FanDuel. Going off of Lamar, I think the next most popular might actually be Dak Prescott, which I've been kind of talking on all the shows. I have no idea where his ownership is going to end up. It looks like it's probably going to end up a little bit higher. So I'm comfortable being underweighted. I said on my Friday show with Jam to Win, I know exactly, it dawned on me while we were doing the show, because we're talking about Dak, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to have him in 5% of my GPP lineups in my 150 build. If he ends up being 10-15% owned, that's great, because I don't think he's got a 10-15% chance of being the top quarterback. Yeah. If he ends up being 2-3% owned, great. I'm happy to be double the field on Dak Prescott. I'm going to own him about 5%. I think that's about right on this 13-game slate. I think he's probably going to end up being higher owned, so I'm comfortable being underweight. In terms of tournament guys that I really like, I think on DraftKings it is Brock Purdy. I think he's going to see lower ownership than he should because of the Sam Darnold questions, and we didn't know if he was really going to be in the lineup. There's so many good pieces. The problem with San Francisco is generally it's too wide open of an offense. We don't know who's going to get the ball. Deebo Samuel, right? And now we kind of know it's Ayuk, Kittle, and McCaffrey. I think maybe you pick two of those guys, pair them with Brock Purdy. Purdy's pretty good savings for you. Then you can actually run that back with a Jamar Chase or even a T Higgins. Is I think a very sneaky call. Somebody whose game log looks terrible, but there's reasons why his game log looks terrible. So that game, kind of the Carolina Houston game a little bit. I know some people are talking up Bryce Young in the chat. I like the CJ Stroud side a little bit better because Adam Thielen's been monopolizing the targets there. So I don't mind the idea of CJ Stroud like Nico Collins or Tank Dell or both with Adam Thielen, and you're kind of getting a lot of the Bryce Young upside potentially with that combination. Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely have some like Bryce Young in my 150 build. I think for like single entry, maybe stuff where I don't have to be as perfect or as off the board. Kind of prefer the CJ Stroud side, and also like the Carolina defense has looked terrible.
Horrible.
On FanDuel, like Jalen Hurts, I think is really good. It's just because you're not saving as much, dropping down in price. So like we would not be shocked if Hurts had the top quarterback score of the week. And Tua, my guy, like again, talk about not having to drop down in price as much. Dolphins, I said it earlier this year, like Dolphins every week. Like if you just played all Dolphins the rest of the year, you're probably not going to lose money. I mean, so like play, Tua, you compare him with Tyreek Hill, you compare him with Jalen Waddle, you can compare him with Raheem Mostert if you want. I would stick one of the wide receivers on there, and like Mostert's like kind of outrageously expensive. I think on FanDuel, I think he might be the most expensive running back after McCaffrey.
It is pretty crazy,
but he's going to be super low owned because of it. So yeah, it's a consideration. But yeah, those are the guys I like, kind of by sight.
I love that. I mentioned that we're at the top, that we're going to bounce around, but you said a couple of things that reminded me of some stuff that struck me this week as well. You mentioned T. Higgins, right? And you mentioned the Dolphins wide receivers, and we've had this thing throughout the course of this season so far, where in every situation where it was 1A, it was perceived to be 1A, 1B, or almost, or like they have two number one wide receivers, which is a stupid cliche or whatever. The alpha has like just distanced themselves to such a great degree through 7 weeks that everyone has said, okay, this is it, right? It's AJ Brown's team. Devonta Smith is nobody anymore. It is Tyreek's team. Jalen Waddle is nobody anymore. And it is Jamar Chase's team. And look, if you look at the 7 weeks, I'm not going to argue. Who am I to say? I can see the same data that everybody else can see. And it has been AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, and Tyreek Hill as the totally dominant wide receivers, target share monsters, right? Putting up the big box scores every week. But like, it's 7 games. Like, is your expectation that Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, and Jalen Waddle are never going to have a big game ever? Those are some pretty good football. Devonta Smith won the Heisman, right? T. Higgins is like a multi-time 1,000-yard wide receiver, right? Jalen Waddle is one of the most talented, freakish wide receivers in maybe the best offense in the NFL, with Tyreek Hill drawing all this coverage, in particular today against the New England Patriots, where if we really want to get fun narrative, Bill Belichick is like the most noted Tyreek Hill's not going to beat me guy coach on the play. Like he even like comes out and says it, and then they double team him. They do. Now Tyreek is so good and the Dolphins are so good, he's going to get his. I'm not saying don't play Tyreek today or any of that kind of stuff, but I am saying that this is an interesting week with those guys, right? Where it has been, we've all just said, yep, the second guy is dust and the alpha is the man. And I don't know, like I bet Devonta Smith receiving yards overs this week. And it's the first time I've done it all season because it was 49.5 yards. Now that's different than playing him in DFS at 6,700 or whatever. But the same thing is true. But like there is still the same upside you thought T. Higgins had in week 1 exists today. No, it really doesn't matter what happened in those 7 weeks. The Bengals haven't changed. Nothing has changed. They were terrible when T was healthy. Then he got hurt, and Jamar Chase went nuts. But like I think that that is. I'm not saying you have to play those. I don't have any of those 3 guys in my lineup as it stands right now, but I'm very interested in them. And I think this is a week where we don't have the backup running backs that get us up to Tyreek and Kupp and whatever. We don't have some of these 3K wide receivers that are right. Puka's not 3K anymore. Puka's 8K, like stuff like that. It has changed a ton. And so I do think that some of the like game theory elements of the really talented player who has not popped yet is pretty interesting. And so you brought that up and I thought that was good. And it also kind of goes along the lines with the Dolphins. Like, hey, like the Dolphins are just good, right? The Eagles are just good. Like just play, you can just play these really, really good teams, especially when they're not popular. And like by the end of the year, you're probably going to come out ahead.
Yeah, and actually, I have a sneaky way of playing, the effect that you're talking about. Because I think you're right. It's an effect that's happened on a few of the top offenses this year. The sneaky way to play that is because as Tyreek Hill's price has gone up, Jalen Waddle's has gone down, and as Jamar Chase's price has gone up, D. Higgins has gone down. The cost for both of them is about the same as it was at the beginning of the year. So you can play Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, and it's about how much it cost you at the beginning of the year. And so that combination, and maybe AJ Brown gets 1 touchdown, Devontae Smith gets 2. This is all conceivable against Commanders. Past, secondary.
More than conceivable, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you would think, it's gonna be AJ Brown getting 2 and Devontae Smith maybe gets 1 or something. It doesn't matter. Just combine them both with Jalen Hurts. And then, in this scenario, right, in this one branch of our mental simulation, Jalen Hurts now already has three passing touchdowns, and maybe he gets 1 rushing touchdown, and suddenly you're on the winning stack.
100%. I think would you say that the Eagles are your favorite one to do this with? That's how I've kind of felt over the course of the week. I don't dislike Waddle. I don't dislike T. I don't dislike the Burrow and Tua stuff, but I do feel like the Eagles, when I take into account the upside, the pricing stuff, like you said, Hurts is a pivot to Lamar. AJ and Devonta Smith are pretty unowned on both sides. It just feels like everything's all kind of coming together with the matchup there, that they stand out a little bit more than, say, Bengals, Dolphins in this manner.
Yeah, I think so. And just, the Eagles offense, the thing you get worried about is them taking the foot off the gas, which is great. That's why I want to be worried about it. Oh my God, they've scored so many points. They
they scored too many. They scored too many points. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the Eagles are probably, and they're starting to get a little bit overlooked. As Lamar Jackson's kind of separating himself in ownership, I think people are going kind of taken away from their Jalen Hurts rosters, and I don't think that's a good idea against. And they're I think there's some concerns about their weather, or there was concerns about the weather. I'm in very close to DC right now. It's not a beautiful day, but it's certainly good enough to play football in. So.
And I will just hit the weather while you mentioned that I got the weather pulled up. I should have shared it, but it seemed as though it was going to be not awesome in several different places. But according to Roth, honestly, I'm not worried about anywhere. I'm not adjusting things. I guess I wasn't really doing anything with the New York Bowl anyway, so I'm not really worried about it. And then KC Denver is very cold, but that's a thing. And maybe you are adjusting more than me, but I'm not personally adjusting anything for any of the weather here. And I thought I was going to be. I guess you could say the wind in Miami is not awesome, but also it's Miami. Everywhere else is cold. It got so goddamn cold so fast. I woke up this morning and it's 30 degrees outside. I was wearing shorts and a tank top the other day. It was 80 on Wednesday. The football weather has changed, but super, super fast. Is there anything that the weather has impacted for you though?
Yeah, well, not in DFS, but I think Schefter sent out a tweet yesterday. It was there's going to be 12 inches of snow in Denver, and the total dropped from 47 to 44.5. And I caught wind of this literally, because I looked and Kevin Roth had responded to him saying the snow's going to be before the game, might snow 1/10 of an inch during the game. I looked, the totals just dropped 2.5 points. So I just put the over on 44.5.
I like it.
Sure enough, it's back up to 46. So it just got a little bit there, but nothing really in DFS. Maybe that cuts it. Patrick Mahomes, Mahomes and Kelsey and Kansas City is always priced up so much that you kind of need perfect conditions there. But it maybe takes me off them 1% or something like that. It's not a huge impact.
Yeah, I like that. I like the way you put that. Big Hurt. I'm going to hit this in just a second, but before I will forget if I don't. The folks were every week. I love our chat because I feel like they are very in tune with the kind of show that we have. Where I mentioned Desmond Ridder. I think you we've brought up some names over the first 8 weeks of this show, right? The Ridder stacks, Puka. We talked about Puka in week 1. We've talked about Chase Claypool and McCole Hardman and Andre Iosivas and Jake Bobo, and we talked about some crazy shit on this show, and the chat is very much in there. And their very first stack that got brought up in the chat since we joined the show was the Bryce Young one. As you mentioned, I really much prefer the CJ Stroud side, but I also think The Texans are definitely not going overlooked, but I think the Texans are somewhat close to a linchpin of this slate for me. And that sounds crazy to say, but it's for a couple reasons. One, the Panthers are just putrid on defense. I mean, probably the worst defense in the league. And they also weren't the worst defense in the league week 1 in terms of talent and everything. They have lost again, this happened last year. If you recall, at the end of last season, they were getting torched. Tom Brady in week 17, if you're in, again, my best ball space, Tom Brady threw for like 400 something yards. Mike Evans caught 4 touchdowns because their whole defense was hurt. JC Horn is out. Brian Burns is trending to out. Like, they are so injury riddled on the defensive side. And they were like maybe average to begin with. And then you lose all of your best players. It's really, really bad. Then you have a Texans offense that's functional at worst, like average to above average, we'll call it, with CJ Stroud in there. They struggled early in the season because of their offensive line play. They had a bunch of offensive line injuries. Now, their O-line is still not awesome, but it has gotten healthier and gotten better as the season has gone on. Robert Woods is out today. Not a huge deal. Noah Brown and John Mechie will step in for him, but it does condense things on the Texans side. So you have a favorable matchup with a good, competent quarterback, basically 2 receivers. You could toss in Dalton Schultz if you wanted to. And I don't think Dameon Pierce is crazy for a flyer in tournaments. I've gotten a little lower on him as the week has gone on. But the field is also gravitating to Tank Dell, and I prefer Nico Collins in terms of the 2 wide receivers. And so I think those guys make a ton of sense. If you want to stack that up, you clearly have an obvious bring back if you want one in Adam Thielen. He's going to get 15 targets or whatever if the game goes how you're hoping it to, with the Texans scoring a bunch of points. And so I do think that game is it's not overlooked because people are playing some Texans, and I'm sure Thielen will get his requisite X% ownership. But I think it's a pretty darn good game to be targeting, at least for like some one-offs or something.
Yeah, I actually was writing up like a blurb on this game on Friday, like doing all my NFL stuff. And I wanted to write something about Nico Collins. I'm like, I know he gets like big chunk plays. So I was like looking at the top 10, top 20 receivers in terms of yards per reception. It's not a terribly like predictive stat, but it means something. And I couldn't find him on the list. And the reason I couldn't find him was because I wasn't looking at number 1. He's the number 1 receiver in the NFL in yards per catch. Like Tyreek Hill is 8. Tank Dell and Nico Collins are both ahead of Tyreek Hill. Like Nico Collins, 18.9 yards per catch. Tank Dell, 17.1. Tyreek Hill, 17. This is a much better offense. And we might still have some of our last year hat on, not realizing it. We're thinking that you don't really want to go nuts with a Houston offense. Like, they're playing a historically bad defense. Like, there's no reason not to be loading up. I like the Dameon Pierce call is really interesting. Like, that's definitely like a tournament call. But like, the Panthers defense is actually worse against the run than the pass. Like, those things can always flip on in a given week, like depending on game plan. I was gonna. Dameon Pierce is one of the guys I had tagged, and then had to take my tag off as I was like, I've got like 10 guys tagged. But I'm glad somebody tagged him there, that little purple dot, and wrote him up. Because if we saw Dameon Pierce at the beginning of the season against like one of the worst rushing defenses, in the league, or probably the worst rushing defense statistically so far this year, and his price had gone down a lot, like he'd be like 80% owned. We'd be talking about like how high, it's just too difficult to get off the Dameon Pierce chalk. Well, yeah, now we're showing him like 2.2% ownership, and like some of the question is like, Devin Singletary's maybe making this more of a timeshare? Maybe, I don't know why. We don't know why that is. Like, maybe that's just a one-off thing from the last game. I think you should try to like get some part of this Texans offense into your builds this week. Like, maybe if you're doing one lineup, you don't necessarily have to jam in. Like, they don't have that high of an implied point total where it's like, oh, you got to like definitely jam this team in. But I think this is a team I want to be overweight on in like single entry in my multi-entry builds, because they could go nuts. Like, this game could, this is the game I picked as the game that could go over its total by the most amount of points.
I think I did too. It's funny you say that, but no, Erik in the chat, great name except for one letter. Mentioned Singletary getting 60% of the snaps last week. So I don't want to play Devin Singletary. And I actually would take that one step further to kind of what John said, is that Dameon Pierce was the lead all throughout the course of the beginning He was the man last year, and then he has been the lead throughout the course of this season. He has been the one stumbling through. Let's pull it up really quickly. Some bad matchups, and when their offensive line plays, look at this. Baltimore, terrible matchup. Atlanta's actually a pretty brutal matchup. Indy is a bad defense, but if they're better at one thing, it's a little bit being better against the run. Jacksonville, meh matchup. Pittsburgh, meh matchup. Saints just perennially shut down the run for whatever reason. I'm not going to put my hand in the dirt here. I know you got some folks in the chat putting the hand in the dirt there, and I'm not even going to sit here and argue with you like, oh, scheme fit or whatever. But the coaches have known if that was a scheme fit for a long time, and Dameon Pierce was the man getting all the work throughout the first portion of the season. Last week, Singletary took on some work, and maybe that will continue, but maybe it won't. They have no ties to Devin Singletary forever. Dameon Pierce is a second-year player that they drafted reasonably highly and played a ton as a rookie. He's a part of their future. Devin Singletary is not. And so, that, of course, there's ebbs and flows. They could split again this week. Devin Singletary could be the starter. I have no idea. But if I'm going to make a bet on an unowned back in this backfield, I want to bet on the young, talented player who's been getting 25 touches for the course of the first part of the season, and just pray that the Singletary thing was like a little blip. You never know. Like there's so much flukiness to exact touches and snap rates and everything in one individual game. I want to lean on the bigger sample, knowing that could be wrong. But I think Pierce would be the bet I want to make in that backfield. But generally speaking, like you said, and we've said, I do think the Texans are a little bit of, like I said, a linchpin for me of this slate, not just because, I got to jam tons of Texans into my lineups, but like I'm looking at this, like on FanDuel, there's not a player over 14%. There's only one player over 10% owned. They have the best matchup. It's consolidated. You mentioned the big play upside. Like there's just like so much good here and no one's playing them. And that's the big piece of it for me.
Yeah, exactly. I think you can, like, if you want to play Devin Singletary, I think that's fine. I think that's like a millie maker, field kind of lineup. I just think that, I'd prefer to go with Dameon Pierce. I agree. I think that's a good insight that the team's got a lot invested in Dameon Pierce. And I just think he's the more talented player. I don't think it's great. Like, yeah, maybe the opportunity does continue. Yeah, I guess we're showing Singletary about 1/5 of the ownership of Pierce. But they're both under 3%. So if they're both under 3%, I'd prefer to go with the guy that I think is more of the team's future, but it could go either way.
Yep. But ultimately, I wanted to talk about the Texans because it got brought up, because I will forget about it. We're going to talk about a lot of different things, and I think they're important. Just super duper quickly. Carolina, is it just Thielen or bust? They seem like a total train wreck everywhere else.
Yeah, I think so. And especially on DraftKings, Adam Thielen is too cheap. And part of that is because he was too cheap at the beginning of the year, and I think they've almost like doubled his price. It doesn't matter because he's still underpriced. And FanDuel has done a little bit of a better job, and Thielen maybe scores better on DraftKings anyway. But I said, I still like Thielen on both sides. I think Thielen you can play outside of like a stack from this game on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I'd be more inclined to, if I'm playing Adam Thielen, I'm playing other pieces from this game and hoping it does like go over its total. Like I think it might. And then Thielen is part of the reason I'm not as high on Bryce Young, just because I think you can capture so much of the Panthers offense by playing Adam Thielen. And then you're playing CJ Stroud, you've got like Tank Dell, maybe even Noah Brown, and then you're running it back with Adam Thielen.
Yep, 100%. I think we didn't talk about him, but Dalton Schultz, I think I just want to throw in there because he may get lost in the shuffle as we close out the show for the next 45 minutes or whatever. Not my favorite tight end. On this, if I'm picking a tight end that I love, I'm not going to be like, oh yes, Dalton Schultz. But great matchup. We like the Texans. I actually kind of think you want to get real gal-brained tournament takey. Stroud with Nico and Schultz instead of Tank Dell, I think is pretty fun. Just because it basically all those guys can score touchdowns. They're all going to get targets. I don't have the slightest idea which one it's going to be. I actually prefer Nico again to Tank, but of course he's a little bit more expensive on both sides. And so I like to bring along my tight end, especially when the tight end is getting a ton of red zone work like Dalton Schultz is. Like if we get lucky and you get the big Stroud 4 touchdown game and 2 of them go to Nico and 2 of them go to Schultz instead of Tank, like I don't see why that can't be a reasonable thing. And then guess what? You're getting your 15 Adam Thielen targets on the on the other side, and boom, that one thing you hit the nuts. You can just play whoever you want around it.
Yeah, I think so. I like Dalton Schultz as a tight end. I'm probably not going to be playing him outside of like a CJ Stroud lineup, but it fits in with that. Just a lot of times it's like this tight end is decent. And or if I'm picking a quarterback, I've got everything else, kind of lined up in my lineup, then if I've got the money, I want the tight end that goes along with that quarterback, because if he's catching an extra touchdown, if he's getting a big chunk play, that's helping that lineup, kind of rise through the field. So I like Dalton Schultz paired with this CJ Stroud lineup.
I love it. All right, let's hit some questions, and then we will get to continuing on here through our look, when you make as many bad calls as I do, we'll take a W here and there. Shout out Jake Bobo, my God, the pride of UCLA via Duke. Probably, I think he runs like a 4.8 40. I'm not kidding you. Like he is just like the most unglamorous prospect ever, but stepped in for DK Metcalf last week. And I mean, all you needed was both Jake Bobo and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Whoever could have guessed it? Both of them last week. What a funny. We went off for 15 minutes or 20 minutes after this exact question from Big Hurt. Says, in your single entry, small field, whatever your core lineups on FanDuel, what's your favorite stack?
So I pivoted right off of Lamar Jackson in terms of like my favorite single entry. That if you want Lamar Jackson, play Lamar Jackson. One of my favorite quarterbacks. Like I would just make sure you have a different combination than like the Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Trey McBride, and then like whatever, like the Seattle and Atlanta defenses. So I pivoted off Lamar Jackson to Jalen Hurts. I think he's got obviously just as much upside. The cost isn't prohibitively more. And like, why not? Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown versus like Lamar Jackson and Zay Flowers. I mean, and then you do have to save a little bit elsewhere in your lineup, but that's fine. Like we have cheap, pretty cheap running backs we can go to that are pretty consistent on FanDuel. Tony Pollard in particular. Like Pollard's like popular on DraftKings. Like he's absurdly lowly priced on FanDuel. I think he's like the 10th or 12th highest running back. So if I'm getting different with Hurts instead of Lamar Jackson, then I think I can eat the chalk at like Tony Pollard at running back. So and then don't mind running back like Terry McLaurin.
Yep, I like that. If you really want to get, so what I also like about that pivot is exactly when you mentioned Hurts and AJ Brown is a little bit more expensive than Lamar and Zay, so I have to save a little bit somewhere. Like that's viewed as like a con, but AJ Brown has a far more significant ceiling than Zay Flowers does, so you should have to save somewhere else, and that in and of itself is almost what makes the stack so powerful in tournaments, because instead of having the $5,600 or whatever Zay is on FanDuel, right? Instead of having the cheap wide receiver there, you had the elite wide receiver. So now you're either going to go to a different cheap wide receiver to get, right? You're going to go to Terry. So perfect. DraftKings. When I go to that 5K range now, I'm going to go to Terry McLaurin instead of Zay Flowers. Right. And then instead of Trey McBride, I'm going to go elsewhere at tight end. And then instead of Tony Pollard, I have to go down a little bit. Right. At that. And it's like, you're still playing good plays at their prices. It's just because you played Hurts, AJ Brown, it forced you to construct something a little bit differently. And you didn't make a bad team. It still projects well. It's still got tons of upside, but just inherently because you clicked those two guys in, it made your team different. And like, you didn't have to do anything. And like, those are my favorite types of things. That's why I wrote in the expert survey, which is completely all useless now. Shout out to the stupid 49ers. But I was like, I'm going to, like, if people are just going to play something this way, I'm just going to play this cheap stack, or like, I'm just going to play Darnold to Kittle or whatever, Darnold to Ayuk, or, I'm going to do, right? That's why do I do the stupid Ritter Pitts stuff? It's like, no, I do love Kyle Pitts, but it's not actually like I'm not a Falcons fan. Desmond Ritter stinks. He's not good at football, but like, I just do that when everybody else has Lamar, and it's like, okay, I'll do Ritter and Tyreek versus your Lamar and Zay, right? Like that sounds fine to me. I'll take that coin flip all week, for my 1% ownership versus your 20. Like I'm down to do that. And so I love the Eagle stack in particular, just for that. What about just really quickly, if you had to pick one, I'll piggyback on this for DraftKings. Is it still Jalen and AJ Brown on DraftKings at their prices? Are you going lower, or what would be your single entry stack on DraftKings?
So I actually do think that you can get more dropping down on DraftKings. And so I don't mind Brock Purdy. And then you get Jamar Chase. You can throw T. Higgins in there. It's not like the T. Higgins is not going to project well. But you can actually get like multiple receivers from the opposing team. And then I get George Kittle fills the tight end position. And then depending on what, that line was probably a little bit too pricey to put in Christian McCaffrey, but you can put in like Christian McCaffrey or Brandon Ayuk. I love the idea of playing like Brock Purdy with multiple Cincinnati run backs. And just like alternating through like 2-3 of like McCaffrey, Ayuk, and George Kittle.
I totally agree. I love me some 49ers. We might talk a little bit more about them, but I also feel like it wash, rinse, repeat, with some of these things is like every week I'm just going to show up and say, the matchup's good. And he's the quarterback of the 49ers and he's 5,600. Like what more do I really have to say? Would you be playing, any quarterback with this high of a team total, with this talented of an offense? He can run. Like, I don't know what exactly is the con about Purdy other than he was in the concussion protocol this week, but I don't think the concussion protocol is like anything to be super worried about. Like I should rephrase. I don't think for our DFS lineups, we should be concerned about the fact that he was in concussion protocol. It's not great for him and, his long-term health, but like, it's not, he didn't sprain his ankle. He didn't, hurt his knee. He didn't hurt his back. And like, it was strictly is he going to pass this? Yep. Wheels up. He's good to go. Or no, he needs to sit out to make sure he's all good. And look, who am I to question the protocols of the doctors? They say he's good. He's good. So I'm not worried about Purdy, but I do think, as you mentioned earlier, it's going to keep his ownership in check. Like nobody's been thinking about Brock Purdy or planning for. People have been like, do I actually play Sam Darnold? Like that's what people have been thinking about. Now they take away Sam Darnold. They're like, nope. Okay, I'm gonna play Dak. Right? Dak's close enough to there or whatever. I'm gonna play those guys, or I'm just gonna play more of the elite quarterbacks. And Purdy gets lost in the shuffle, and I don't think he should. I think you can make a case that he should be it. I haven't like run a ton of optimals or anything, but he should be in the cash game mix on DraftKings specifically, not on FanDuel. And so anybody that should be in the cash game mix at least should not be super, super low owned in tournaments. And he's going to be. So, and like you said, super clear stacking partners. There's 3 dudes, pick 1 or 2 of them. Easy game.
Yeah. I always, I call it Kirk Cousins syndrome, but I might actually rename it like Brock Purdy syndrome, where people love like when Justin Jefferson's healthy, people are like, oh, you got to get like Justin Jefferson. Like I love like TJ Hawkinson's like most under-owned tight end, and nobody ever talks about playing Kirk Cousins. And part of that is like there's limited rushing ability, so you're not going to get like the 2 like tush push touchdowns or whatever, right? And Brock Purdy like not similar. He's probably not going to be getting you like 70, 80 yards rushing. But like he's priced for that. He's priced for the fact that he's not going to be getting you like that, tons of rushing yards, and he's capable of running your quarterback sneak. You never know. And then like people rush out to play like George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk. Like, why are you not playing the quarterback, right? Like you get to play the quarterback. Along with that, these like one-off players, like just make it a game stack. So that's my take on Brock Purdy. Yeah, already 1 rushing touchdown on the season.
2 of them. Two rushing touchdowns, and a 300-yard passing game. I mean, I don't know. It seems like a pretty good play to me at his ownership. All right, some more questions. Malyala says Pacheco or Brees in single entry. That's a pretty interesting question.
I would go with Brees Hall. I think he's going to be the higher owned. And I don't mind either of those guys. I think I have Pacheco tagged. I would go with Brees Hall. He's just been getting more and more of the work. I do think he's one of those running backs that he can score from anywhere on the field. So that's the kind of player that I like. it's kind of a sneaky home game, right? Like they're at the Giants,
true.
but it's their stadium too. So yeah, I
And
don't
the Giants
mind.
suck, and the Giants are
Yeah.
so terrible that it might be more Jets fans. That's a very good point.
Yeah, exactly. So like they like part of that is real. Like right, part of the reason that home field advantage is a home field advantage is often the other team has to be traveling and staying in hotels, and they're out of their routine, and they don't know where to practice, whatever. Like
The noise, right? You're calling plays, and the receivers can't hear the quarterback, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like this is kind of a sneaky home game for the Jets. So I like Brees Hall, but I wouldn't I wouldn't think you're crazy for playing Pacheco.
Here's a fun one. Shout out to our friends over at scoresandodds.com. I like to post as many as I can. I don't get to as many NFL ones, a little more NBA and college stuff. I'll be grinding college basketball when it gets here. I'm very excited for that. I know I'm a nerd and a weirdo for loving college basketball, but such is life. But I posted, I'm on the Chris Olave. I mentioned earlier, Devonta Smith. I'm on his receiving yards over. I'm on Chris Olave over receiving yards as well today. And a fun little parlay I stumbled across for the degenerates that, DraftKings always got these boosts, right? Or free, a risk-free bets and all this different stuff. Christian McCaffrey, 100 rushing yards. Brees Hall, 100 plus rushing yards, and Chris Olave 100 plus receiving yards. It's like 75-1 or something like that today. So used a little boost on that baby. But to your point, Brees Hall, why I say that is because Brees Hall is probably going to have like 30 yards or 120 yards today. Like he's going to rip a long one or two and they're going to like dominate this game, or Zach Wilson is going to screw up. Right. And they're just going to load the box and get completely shut down. A question, somebody just tagged me in Discord literally at this exact moment. So in the chat, I promise that we'll continue to roll through some of these questions here. But asked about JT and Familiar Voice 93. Shout out to you for tagging us in the Discord. Can you talk about Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss? It appears, I'm just double checking, Zach Moss is active. So he missed practice on Wednesday, was limited on Thursday, and then missed practice on Friday and was questionable. And they said he's going to, test out his heel, I guess is the most important part. Clearly he's been taking about 50% of the work from Jonathan Taylor. The matchup is meh, but the game environment is pretty good. Setting aside the Saints run defense and all that different stuff. I was obviously, we were going to be having a very different conversation about JT if Zach Moss was inactive today, but with him active, how are you processing that backfield?
He's kind of a secondary running back for me. Like he's not somebody that I think you necessarily need to jam into your lineups. But I would still lean towards Jonathan Taylor over Zach Moss just because you would kind of expect Taylor to be getting more of the work anyway as the season goes on. Keep in mind that he missed the first 4 games. So you would expect him, getting the contract and stuff to come back and work his way into more and more, percentage of the touches or whatever. So I like Jonathan Taylor, over Zach Moss, and I think he can play. I like him. He's a secondary running back for me, but he's one of the secondary running backs that I'm using in my multi-entry build, and I think he's single entry viable. Like if you want to play him. It's just not the highest point total game, so I think there might be other opportunities to play Jonathan Taylor going down the road that are a little bit better. And like Tony Pollard is just too underpriced. Brees Hall too underpriced. So that's why Taylor isn't one of my top running backs, but I think he's definitely in play.
I totally agree. I'll just hit these really quickly. Mahomes was noted this morning that he's battling an injury, but will play. I would not worry about this at all. He might have the sniffles while he's out there in the snow, but I don't think that's going to stop Patrick Mahomes from scoring fantasy points or the Chiefs from scoring points. Doug says Mahomes has the flu, and I'm right there with him. Yeah, it is that time. It is that time of year. This is a great question from Donnie. Certainly different on DraftKings than on FanDuel with this particular question, but the leverage one is a good thing to ask. On DK and single entry, would it make sense to play the Philly stack, like you mentioned before, AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, with Gus Edwards at running back? That way you're really racking up the leverage, right? Eagles smash, and then Gus is the guy who gets the touchdowns instead of Lamar. Do you have any interest in that, even though I know Gus doesn't catch passes?
Yeah, I thought about that. I kind of have a no Gus Edwards rule. I basically have a no Baltimore running back rule.
Yeah.
Just because like it's the more likely thing. I like the thought process and I like the strategy. I just don't like Gus Edwards.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather play other guys at that price and who I think are more likely to outscore him. But I get it was 6,600. I'd rather just find the money to get to like Breece Hall or Tony Pollard. Like it's only 600 more to get to Breece Hall. Oh, I guess DraftKings. Sorry, I'm looking at FanDuel pricing. Either way,
he's 5,500. He's 5,500, and Breece Hall's 5,900. So
yeah, so even less to get to to get up to Breece Hall. So I think it's just, especially with the DraftKings full point per reception scoring. Like there's other guys. I'd rather drop down to Dameon Pierce than play Gus Edwards.
I will say, I don't think it's crazy on FanDuel, where he doesn't get dinged as much for the pass catching. And if you happen to get 2 touchdowns at 6,600, right? If Breece goes for 101 and Gus goes for 80 and 2, like, you didn't bury yourself playing Gus Edwards over him. We know the Ravens are going to score points. It's just, as you mentioned, I pretty much have a no Gus Edwards rule. I just, there are certain guys, right, that but I agree. I wanted to bring it up because the question is an awesome question. And the thought process in getting to this question and this idea, I think is excellent. But as you said, there still has to be like kind of the requisite upside that comes with that player. And particularly on DraftKings, like Gus could run for 100 yards and a touchdown. And like, that's good. You're happy, but like Breece can do that on like 1 carry. You know what I mean? Like literally, I'm not even exaggerating. Like Breece can touch the ball 6 times. He did it in week 1. He scored more. Gus Edwards, I believe, scored a touchdown last week and had an 80-yard catch. And Breece Hall outscored him on like 10 touches in week 1. in week 1. Like that's just what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, like when you're watching these games, like on your phone or whatever, like when you're splitting your lineups, like I think about every reception that gets like stuffed at the goal line or whatever, every like running back screen or he's gets a pass catch for no gain, like that's a 10-yard run. And like Gus Edwards is just generally not getting those 10-yard runs that other running backs are getting. We probably just guaranteed like an all-time Gus Edwards receiving game. Like just being so down on him. Like his all-time receiving game actually just happened last week with that 180-yard catch. So I just don't want to go back there.
I agree. Brian asks 5,700. This is one I was not prepared for. 5,700 left for a flex on FanDuel. Who is my best option? I'm scrolling down just a little bit just to check where we're at 5,700. So, oh God, when the first name is Zeke, that's generally not a range I want to be in. Zeke, Elijah Moore, no. Jordan Mason, Rashid Shaheed, I think is interesting. Gallup, the aforementioned Devin Singletary. What do you like 5,700 and under for a flex?
I think I like Amari DeMarcado. Yeah. I would go there. Actually, in terms of like super cheap pump plays on FanDuel, Rondale Moore and Brandon Powell. I think I've got Brandon Powell tagged. I think one of my hot takes, I think he can outscore Jordan Addison. He's gotten I think at least 5 targets and 1 rush each of the past 3 or 4 weeks. So I think that even goes back to Justin Jefferson being healthy. He's a guy that they're trying to get involved at least, with a couple of designed plays each week. And at 4,700 is super cheap, and that's that's a little bit cheaper than we were asking for in that question. So I would go to DeMarcado, but if you want to try to drop down to Powell or Rondale Moore, depending on who the quarterback and the rest of your lineup is, then take that 1,000 and spend elsewhere. I think you can look at that.
I like it. I'll take this from Tankenstein. He asked Nico and Thielen or AJ Brown and Curtis Samuel. I would say that these two are lineup dependent. What is your kind of plan of attack with that lineup? It may be that there's no one else, right? You're not playing either any of these 4 quarterbacks or anything like that. In which case, I don't have an amazing take. I think I prefer the Nico Thielen side, but generally I would be okay, what's like I would need to see the rest of the lineup probably for this one to make a truly firm decision, but I would lean towards the first.
Yeah, me too. I think I would lean towards the first one. But like if you're playing like Lamar Jackson, maybe AJ Brown is an interesting play there, right? Because then you're playing Lamar and you're just hoping AJ Brown gets all of the work, and that the quarterbacks who expect to be the highest scoring are the highest scoring. So it would depend on your lineup, but maybe in a vacuum, prefer the Nico Collins one if he's going to be underowned.
Jose asked JT or Damian Pierce for cash. Neither. JT, I guess, just because there's a small bit of inherent risk with Damian Pierce with the Devin Singletary stuff, and JT is just a freaking baller. But for me, there's a very small group of running backs that are probably cash viable to me, and I don't think either of these two are in it for me. I like them both for tournaments, but not for cash.
And there's a pretty big price difference too. This is probably a FanDuel question, and either way, I'd say Jonathan Taylor, but I think there's like a $900 price difference on DraftKings. So like in that case, I mean, I would definitely go with Jonathan Taylor on FanDuel. Like there's a less of a price difference on FanDuel.
Yep. Lots of good questions. We maybe just roll in some questions also because you guys asked about a few more things I want to talk about. So we'll field as many as we can get to here. And then, of course, the crunch time folks will be with us in 20 minutes or so, and they'll lead you guys all the way up to lock. If we don't hit your question, they will. Tyler says, Tyron Smith, the starting left tackle, is out for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't get the Pollard chuck. I would say, it is very certainly notable that Tyron Smith is out. Same thing somebody asked earlier. Trent Williams, the left tackle for the 49ers, is probably out. Those things do matter, and I tend to care a little more about the offensive line probably than the average person does. But in terms of the running backs, it's a little bit more of a pass protection issue, right? When the left tackle is out, I do worry about it more for the quarterback than I do for the running back. Like, say whatever we want, like Trent Williams and Tyron Smith are awesome, but like the backup left tackle will come in and probably just like be a feasible run blocker. And they may lean more on the run if they don't have their franchise left tackle. So like, it's not that big of a deal, I don't think, for Pollard. You could argue it's a little bit of a deal for like Dak and CD and Gallup and those guys for sure. And so it would just lean me more to, if I'm playing the Cowboys, I do prefer Pollard over the pass game, even though I think I tagged Michael Gallup, but that's because he's 3,400 on DraftKings. But let's talk about Dallas real quick. What are we doing with the Pollard chalk? What are we doing with, like you mentioned, you did kind of talk about Dallas pass game already, but anything specific on the wide receiver, CD, Gallup, etc.?
Yeah, like I said, I think I'll play Dak Prescott and CD Lamb stacks on like 5% of my rosters. Tony Pollard is one of the running backs I'm using extensively, especially on FanDuel. I think he's the 9th most expensive running back on FanDuel. This team has one of the highest implied point totals of the week. I like, the offense is going to come from somewhere. They're going to score. They're at home. I agree. Actually, I think the left tackle being out maybe does help the rushing game a little bit, at least relative to the passing game. Or maybe just doesn't hurt the rushing game as much as it would hurt the passing game. So it's just difficult to find a running back priced under Tony Pollard that I like better. Like Breece Hall is there. But I'm ending up with a lot of like Tony Pollard, Breece Hall lineups, and that's then the kind of the cash game build. I just think there's few workhorse running backs left in the league. Tony Pollard is one of them. He shouldn't be on one of the projected highest scoring teams of the week and only be the 9th most expensive running back. So that's why people are talking up Tony Pollard this week.
I agree. And I will also add that I understand that the Rams, I understand there's a convergence of two different things happening here with Tony Pollard. He and the Cowboys run game has been pathetic. That's probably putting it lightly. Honestly can't believe how bad they've been running the ball with one of the most explosive most talented young running backs, a competent offensive line. The matchups have not been awesome. So I'll at least generally not been awesome. But it has been a little fluky. I mean, a little bit of incompetence at the goal line and in the red zone for the Cowboys. Shocker. Mike McCarthy is they're running Peyton Hendershot end arounds at the goal line instead of, handing it to Tony Pollard. What a surprise. Or throwing it to CD Lamb. God forbid. We just give it to our best players. But The Rams defense has also been exceeded expectations a little bit. I don't expect either of those two things to continue for the rest of the season. I don't know that today is going to be the time that it flips for both of them, but the Rams have like legitimately like XFL level talent around Aaron. There's Aaron Donald, who's awesome. And then a bunch of like just guys on defense. And then the Cowboys have all this talent, including Tony Pollard, and they're not producing. I think we see those things go the opposite directions. I don't know if it'll happen today. And certainly you have to, eat some chalk to find out. But like, I don't know. I got plenty of ways that I can build a good team around Tony Pollard. And I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, I do. And like somebody commenting on Kamara versus Pollard. I think Kamara is a fine play. I think that's more of a DraftKings pivot that I would make. Like on FanDuel, then that's the thing. Like Pollard's just going to get so many opportunities for that price on FanDuel. It's really difficult to like. I'm going to own him in a higher percentage than I own running backs generally. Any running back generally on FanDuel.
I like it. What are you doing with Kamara in particular on DraftKings? I know I have FanDuel pulled up here, but he's pulling some ownership on FanDuel as well. I think the Kamara thing is interesting where we get really like, certainly he's going to get catches, right? It's like what he's done his whole career. So I don't think we should be stunned that he's getting a bunch of catches. The extent to which he is getting the checkdowns is certainly a factor of Derek Carr. It has also been a major factor of game script. And I think that is something to keep in mind, that the exact raw number of catches he's getting and touches he's getting, Jamal Williams was out to start there. Now, Jamal Williams came back and he had 14 targets. So like, who am I to say that Jamal Williams really matters? But I don't think that they want Alvin Kamara to be getting a bunch of 1-yard checkdowns. They were also trailing by a ton last week. They've been trailing multiple, and maybe they do fall behind again. But like the Colts are not necessarily the team that's going to come out and put them down by 20 or whatever, to where they got to be, throwing 55 passes and a bunch of checkdowns to Alvin Kamara. So I would just be, I'm not playing Alvin Kamara. Like I mentioned before, Chris Olave is one of my favorite plays. Today, I think he makes for good leverage on Kamara, and I just prefer him overall, positionally, etc. But what are you doing with Kamara and like the Saints, generally speaking? With I know people are attached to these targets, but I think that they come and go a little more than people expect.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's well said. I was high on Alvin Kamara when he was coming back, and people weren't on him. And I was thrilled to be getting those like 13 receptions on DraftKings. But that game was also part of that was probably Derek Carr's shoulder injury, where maybe he's not pushing the ball down the field. And I think Carr is getting a little bit stronger each week. Also, Michael Thomas being in probably like takes the shine off Alvin Kamara a little bit, just because like you could see where maybe Kamara was going to be getting a bunch of those shorter receptions if Michael Thomas was out. Now, if Thomas is in, like maybe he's not getting those. Like most of the times he's going to be between that like 13 reception game and that 3 reception game. And so that's what he's priced for. So it's fine. I got rather try to find a running back in an offense I think is going to score more points. But if I don't have the salary to get up to maybe somebody higher price than Kamara, I don't mind, the 7-8 receptions that I might get either. So I think he's a fine play. I think he's going to be highly owned. My gut feeling is just looking at the game log, he's going to be a little bit higher owned than he should be, but he's got a pretty good floor too. Like he's probably not going to be a guy that kills your lineups. So if you've got like that amount of price left and you want to put in Kamara, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think cash games very much in play, if not the best running back. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a cash player, but he would be certainly in my core of running back / flex class cash game considerations, probably on both sites, but of course, much more on DraftKings. This is good. Don't remember, it is the Mahomes flu game out there this week. That's pretty funny. Nicholas asked best flex on FanDuel for 6,200 or less. Give me 1 second and I'll scroll on down to the $6,200 range and we can just take a peek-see.
I'd go Kittle.
George Kittle. I think Josh Downs is okay, but much better on DraftKings. Kind of the same for Kendrick Bourne. Brutal matchup for Brian Robinson. I don't want to talk too long about this, but are you doing anything with the 2 Vikings running backs? They happen to fall in this conversation. Good matchup. Who the hell knows who's going to get the ball right between these 2 guys? But I think that there's potential for one of them to break the slate. There's also potential for them to just split and do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I try to stay away from split backfields because I think you can lose more money trying to guess on the guy, because it's always so tempting because you like look at ownership projections. It's like, oh, the only reason these guys are, projected so low in terms of ownership is so we don't know which one's going to get the carries. So if I can guess that right, I'm getting somebody at low ownership that can have a big game. It's just hard to get that right. Like, I think you can lose more money trying to get that right. I'm probably going to stay away from it. Minnesota has the second most passing attempts in the NFL per game. I'd rather spend down for Brandon Powell. You can save a ton of money, or fill the tight end position with TJ Hawkinson, I think, or hope for a big game from Jordan Addison. Then go to the running backs and try to guess, is it Cam Akers week or Alexander Madison week?
I think that makes a ton of sense. I will also throw in that just for a smidge more, like Ramondre's on here. We didn't talk about them. Are you gonna play any? You're gonna play some Dolphins, I assume. Are you gonna play any of these? Are you gonna guess on the Patriots? The Patriots are another split backfield. There is Kendrick Bourne. Somebody asked about Demario Douglas earlier, and I just will say that I believe Juju was out and Juju is back, if I recall correctly. I would have to double check that. Forgive me, I don't have Juju Smith-Schuster and Patriots alerts at the top of my priority list, but I believe that was part of why Douglas got to play a little bit more. But anything on the Patriots at all for tournaments?
Not really. Just kidding. Kendrick Bourne's going to end up being my running back, and my run backs rather. With if I do a run back on Dolphin stacks, I don't think you necessarily need to the implied point totals are 27.5. So I think it was 28 earlier in the week. Yeah, 27.5 and 19. That means to me I don't need to do a run back. And if I do, it's probably going to be Kendrick Bourne. I can see Kendrick Bourne on DraftKings. It was a couple weeks ago. We got 10 receptions on one drive. Or I think 10 targets on one drive. And I was playing him that week in a couple of lineups that were doing well. I was thrilled. Yeah, it was 10 receptions. I think he had almost none entering that drive. I think Kendrick Bourne's underpriced. I think he's the best receiver on that team. I don't know. Ramondre Stevenson, kind of the same thing. Ezekiel Elliott is better than I would have expected, and I think I think the Patriots are seeing that too. So it's kind of devolved into a split backfield situation on a team that doesn't score a lot of points. I'm not going to take their even in Millie Maker entries, probably not going to take that risk too much unless maybe it's a run back on a Dolphin stack. But for the most part, leaving the Patriots alone. I always think you should look at the implied point total, and when it's under 20, you don't necessarily need to be bringing a run back or playing that team at all.
What I would also add is, like you said, they're not expected to score a lot of points. We'll hand in the dirt it for 2 seconds. Jalen Ramsey is back for the Dolphins. Yes, he plays for the Dolphins now. Does that matter? I don't know. It certainly can't hurt their defense. I do think their defense has slowly gotten a little bit better. The Patriots offense stinks. But if you're going to, right, I've played guys this year on low point totals, but when I do it, A, they need to be cheap. So the Patriots are reasonably cheap. Okay, that's okay. And then B, I want it to be consolidated, right? I played Deontay Johnson last week. It's why did he wasn't, the tournament winner, but I don't know. I got 14 points or something from him on DraftKings. It's why do I play guys on low scoring offenses? Because he's the only guy that gets the ball, right? He's one of only 3 guys that get the ball. That's great. Ideally, I would have high scoring teams where it's only a certain couple of guys, but you can't always, you can't always have that. But if I'm going to delve into I don't want to delve into the crappy teams who also give the ball to 10 guys. I need I'll dive into the high scoring teams that give it to a bunch of guys, but I don't want both of those negatives. And the Patriots are unfortunately just one of those. I think Kendrick Bourne could have a big game today and he would be my preference, but there's a lot of running backs we like. I don't want to deal with the Patriots split for me personally. Hunter Henry, I guess you could throw in your tight end mix as well as a bring back, but not anything that special. Okay. A couple.
I will just throw in, on DraftKings, I do have in some Millie Maker entries, in my 150 set, a Mac Jones, Kendrick Bourne, and then higher priced Dolphins stacks. Because I think that makes sense. Because Mac Jones is super, super cheap, and this is a DraftKings only thing. The $5,000 quarterback I'd pair him with a wide receiver that can get double-digit receptions. And if you're saving a ton of money in a game that could be high scoring with like players on the opposite side that are super expensive, like I think that's a strategy. Like, and then you're getting like Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert, kind of that kind of strategy.
I like it. Yeah. Oh, you're fine. Please do. Somebody probably needs to. I like it. Beantown says, does Pacheco stock rise with the Mahomes news? No, unless, I don't know if there's some, Pacheco needs to be close to a guy with the flu or something to play better. I don't think it matters too much. I guess you could pipe dream about, more running because Mahomes is feeling a little bit under the weather, but I like Pacheco anyway. And that's why I brought it up because I think he's a strong play. I don't think you need to galaxy brain any more reason to like Isaiah Pacheco. He's the lead back who catches passes and gets goal line carries on one of the best offenses in the NFL against one of the worst defenses in the NFL. What are you doing with Pacheco?
Yeah, like he's a running back. Yeah, he's in there with the conversation of running backs that I'm using extensively. Like, Kamara, Breece Hall, Tony Pollard. I don't think Pacheco is necessarily like sneaking past anyone. But again, and the weather maybe does, like maybe the weather just being cold, kind of miserable, snowy does, I don't think they're going to get a bunch of snow during the game. Maybe that ends up with them running the ball a couple more times than they would otherwise.
Checking it down. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So Pacheco, I think, is in play no matter what. And if Mahomes having the flu, for me, it's Mahomes is too expensive. And that's what leads me to go with Pacheco. If you want it to be the flu, then that's fine. Play Isaiah Pacheco in that lineup if you were leaning towards it anyway.
All right. I want to something we did last year every show, the last couple of years every show. It'll be a perfect segue into our crunch time folks that are going to come on with us. We used to do a hot take. We used to, a flag plant, a hot take, a pound the table, whatever the heck you want to call it. And we haven't been doing it. I've been slacking. This whole transition in and out of the shows is throwing me off my game apparently. But I got to we're into week 8. We're really in the depths of the season. What's the hot take for week 8 that's going to win everybody tournaments that we're not expecting to happen?
Ooh, okay. I have a mild hot take. My mild hot take was that I think Brandon Powell outscores like TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison. I can think of something hotter if you want to go.
Oh, yeah. You can think of something hotter, and I will go. So here was what my hot take was for the expert survey. I have sort of backpedaled a little bit, but it's also just because I really like the pass game for this team. My hot take on the expert survey was 100 yards and 2 touchdowns for Dameon Pierce. I'm gonna pick. This is nowhere near as hot as your Brandon Powell take, and I wish I had a Jake Bobo or something this week, but I unfortunately do not. I would say this is not as sneaky as some of those guys. I really like the Saints passing game, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit. But Olave will be I think this is the Olave breakout game. Everybody's gonna chase Kamara, and I think it's Olave that you want on that offense. It's a little bit of prayer yards for him, in terms of the analytical profile, but it's absolutely elite. And the matchup is pristine. If you want to get your hand in the dirt, shout out. I don't remember if it was Rich Rebar or John Daigle the other night I listened to talking about really specifics of this matchup where Carr has struggled against man coverage with Chris Olave. Shocker, that's the prayer yard stuff. He's just throwing bombs and it's nowhere close. But when they have faced zone, they've really been awesome, and he's really leaned on Olave. And the Colts play basically 100% zone. And so just little things that get me onto Olave there. But I'll also say that if you're punting, Rashid Shaheed, I think, is maybe my favorite guy there. Michael Thomas is playing, so we're not getting any extra boost without Michael Thomas, but Shaheed should have had a touchdown last week. He's the home run hitter on this offense. He gets some schemed up touches. I think if I'm punting, I like Shaheed to go along with there's 2 punts for you. You need some punts, Brandon Powell and Rashid Shaheed there. As we bring in the crunch time folks, we're gonna go right to you two guys and get some hot takes. We're on the Saints passing game here, and apparently Brandon Powell. So Britt, what do you got to top some Rashid Shaheed and Brandon Powell love?
Oh, so I know you guys were just talking up Isaiah Pacheco. I don't know if we can bring up the screen share here, but we're probably not with 4 of us. But one of my bets of the week is Pacheco receiving yards. Love that. We got the flu game. We got some snow. He's going over in that one. So that was one of my nice ones I had over on Scores and Odds. So I like that one. And I've got my ultimate hot take, Chris Rodriguez touchdown score plus 900 for Washington today. He's getting some snaps, and Brian Robinson stinks. And there's not really much else to do in that offense.
And they hate Antonio Gibson.
Yeah. So anyone getting even a couple of touches at running back should not be plus 900. So I put a little sprinkle on that.
I love that. TJ, what do you got?
I am going to go. So what's tough is Pacheco and Raheed Shaheed were among my highest owned hot take plays today. But so I'm going to go Lamar Jackson throws for 4 touchdowns today.
Who to? Two-part question.
2 to Zay Flowers, 1 to Mark Andrews, and 1 to OBJ.
Okay.
That sounds good for everybody out there too.
Yeah.
A side note, if you're on Prize Picks, they have Flowers and Andrews to score a touchdown as like a combined is like a prop you can go get over there. So go
over 0.5
for both of them combined. Yeah. So go have fun over there.
Okay, I like that. On that note, I'm gonna run over to Prize Picks here and go take that from Brit. Brit and TJ will lead you guys all the way up to lock. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back next Sunday. If you're not doing anything, you're hanging out watching the games later, and you've got a Sirius XM subscription, we have a show, RotoGrinders Game Night, from 5 to 8, 6 to 9. I don't know, whatever. Check it out. It'll be on Twitter. It's on the schedule on the site. I'll be on there with Chris Prince, aka Beer Makers Fan, later, and I'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.
All right, guys, what's going on? Me and TJ, our usual MLB weekend crew, back for some football. TJ, what's going on? We had our hot takes. There's some weather. There's some flu. The injury reports came back pretty much as expected. I was hoping Zach Moss would be out so I could play 100% Jonathan Taylor, but maybe still some Jonathan Taylor in the works today. What's going on? I got the weather pulled up, but maybe after intros we can go over just real quick what's going on weather-wise for everybody.
You know, I wanted Michael Thomas out as well, but that's okay. I'm adjusting a couple things right now. I'm torn between 2 cash lineups, so I'm in the midst of doubling down on my entry fees and just putting in a second team as well. Yeah, this is a fun little slate we got going. I'm excited.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff going on all around. But real quick, let's bring up the weather. Again, we can do the screen share. I've got the weather forecast from Mr. Kevin Roth, duking it out with ESPN personalities on what's going to happen in the Kansas City game, now mixed in with some Patrick Mahomes flu. So he's sick. He was getting IVs. Just take that into account, whether you want to or not. He's Patrick Mahomes. He's running out there with a bum ankle. He could have a broken leg, a broken arm. Patrick Mahomes is going to be out on the field. I don't expect too big of a letdown in terms of anybody on that offense today, unless he's really just like deathly ill. It was yesterday he was getting fluids. That's the day you're really sick. Maybe you're doing a little bit better today. I'm not really too concerned about it. But we have some snow, possibly really cold there. The rest of it's pretty much just a little bit of rain, a little bit of wind. Are you taking into account any weather? This is something we have to go over basically every week in the NFL season.
Basically ignoring it completely. Honestly, I'm just playing this like a regular game, like a regular set of games. Maybe a little lower on the Miami game and the Kansas City game than I otherwise would have been, but don't really care all that much. Nothing's crazy out there.
Yeah, I'm sort of doing the same way as well here. So let's get into some of the picks and plays we're all going to be looking at today. I've highlighted mainly for cash, just a couple of players I'm looking at on each site as we go through this. Real quick, cash game. I guess I'll handle cash. TJ, you can handle tournaments. We'll throw it back and forth on some ideas we might have for everything. But basically, I have one cash quarterback today. It's Lamar Jackson against Arizona. I know your hot take was 4 passing touchdowns. That sounds great for all of my lineups today. He can get it done running. The lineup's absolutely amazing. When I did the fantasy points show on Tuesday, those guys, I know we're all in on him as well. He's playing great. Maybe not as great as MVP season, but he's literally just a tick down from that in terms of what he's doing as a passer. And he's got some viable weapons. Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, throwing some of the ancillary pieces. Lamar Jackson's my cash game. All sites, without question today. From a tournament perspective, I might have some tournament takes. I'm playing around with a little something new here at RotoGrinders. But what are you looking at tournament-wise?
And funny enough, I'm playing 2 huge cash lineups as my main 2 lineups today. But I am still running 150 max in one contest, and then I MME'd they have a great $3 contest on DraftKings, 20 entry max, 100K up top to first. So I put 20 in that one as well. I'm focusing a lot on Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts as my two main guys today. They're my primary targets on both sites. I'm getting to a lot of that Houston and Carolina game, and then I'm getting to a lot of the New Orleans Saints and Indiana game because that's expected to be fast paced with one poor defense and then the other one playing a strong defense, but struggles to a slot receiver against a team that concentrates most of their targets to their slot receiver.
If you guys want to know what I'm talking about, by the way, something new at RotoGrinders, head over to the Discord. It's the low cost of free 99. That's free 99. And there's a new channel in there. TJ, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's called Sims Beta NFL. Just, I don't know, guys. Go check that out. Maybe there's something new coming here at RotoGrinders. So, yeah, other quarterbacks I'm looking at personally. I love this New Orleans Indianapolis game from both sides. Minshew has a pretty condensed target tree. It's going to Pittman. It's going to Downs. I did really want Zach Moss to be out, but I think you can play Jonathan Taylor in pretty much any format today. He should get some receiving work, maybe even get more work as the season progresses. Plus, we have Moss with a little bit of an injury concern as well. This could be 20-plus touches for Jonathan Taylor today. On the flip side, again, how do you not want Kamara getting all the catches? How do you not want Chris Olave getting all the targets? Maybe Michael Thomas, maybe Shaheed. But this, you know where all the fantasy points are going to come from in this game. So I really like that one. The other one I'm on is Houston, Carolina, more so from the Houston side. You have a very easy run back in Adam Thielen, who's getting a bajillion targets. He was talked about on the very early show. But those are a couple of games I'm looking at. I bet both of those games to be the highest scoring of the week on DraftKings as well. Just with scoring so condensed, trying to figure out a game, right? These are both games in reasonable weather. One's indoors. How do you not want to play games like that? I think they could both shoot out. So those are a couple teams I'm looking at. Specific quarterbacks. I mean, what do you want? I like Trevor Lawrence against Pittsburgh. I mentioned Minshew. Just going down in terms of maybe I should switch to ownership, maybe even look at DraftKings a little bit more. What else is in your player pool as you get down as maybe a couple guys you might want to have?
So at quarterback, as I go down the player pool, my highest owned are, of course, Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, like I mentioned. But then I have about 5 to 10% of a little group of guys, and it's CJ Stroud, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow, Gardner Minshew, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, and Patrick Mahomes. I did hand build a couple Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, and Kenny Pickett teams as well, but I didn't include them in my MME pool.
Yeah, I did not expect. We've got CJ Stroud as the second highest projected owned quarterback on DraftKings. Now, I like that game. It's against Carolina. I love Nico Collins. I definitely prefer Nico over Tank Dell. If you're choosing between the two, I think Dell is reasonably viable as a cash game play. You've got Downs as well. That's a pretty tough decision, I think, for everybody around the industry. Do you think Stroud should be the second highest owned quarterback today?
No, I think it should be Jalen Hurts, but I do understand how Stroud is picking up that ownership. Like, he's cheap. He's been really, really good. Like, he's been fantastic. And so, and he's got a concentrated group of receivers that he throws the ball to. You're picking between Dell and Collins and Schultz. And so you got Robert Woods out. It concentrates it more. I do understand why he's up there. I don't think he should be 2, but I understand why he's up there.
Yeah, from lineup perspective, right? You have reasonably cheap targets all around for him. You have cheap running backs. One of those running backs from Houston's probably going to have a big game too. I would try to get exposure to one of, if not both of them, in your MME pools today. Anything else at quarterback you want to talk about, or do you want to start dicing up running back? Because there's some very clear chalk. Let's just go right to that. Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, Tony Pollard. These guys look pretty good. I think Pacheco is also pretty clear in line to be one of the top 3 or 4. I'm in complete agreement with our projected ownership on these guys here. If you had to pick one of them that you would be overweight on, maybe you are overweight on, who would it be?
So it's Breece Hall for me. He's my highest owned guy. I have him in 42% of my lineups today. I have a clear top 4 of Breece Hall, Isaiah Pacheco, Alvin Kamara, and Travis Etienne. Those guys are my 4 today. You like Lawrence, I like Etienne. They've just been absolutely feeding him with the ball lately. In addition to those guys, I'm still getting a lot of Jonathan Taylor, and then a couple cheap guys as well. Chuba Hubbard and Amari DeMercado I'm getting to a lot of on both sites today. Hubbard is expected to get an increased workload. DeMercado got basically all of the work last week. We like Baltimore. I think he makes for a great run back. He's involved in the passing game as well as the running game. So even if Baltimore gets ahead, I think DeMercado is still in play. And then I want to get to Christian McCaffrey because you always want to get to Christian McCaffrey. I'm not doing a lot of full stacking of San Francisco, but I am getting a lot of lineups where I'm playing like one of McCaffrey, Kittle, or Brandon Ayuk today. And then the last guy is kind of rounding up my pool: DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, Raheem Mostert, Kareem Hunt, and Dameon Pierce in just a few lineups. The one thing I'd say is I'd greatly bump up Tony Pollard and even Jonathan Taylor on FanDuel, where they're a lot cheaper over there.
Yeah. I got on FanDuel. I have Pollard as close to a lock specifically for cash games. DraftKings a little more questionable because he is one of the more expensive running backs. Maybe you need him, maybe you don't over on DraftKings from a cash perspective. So I mentioned from tournaments, Dameon Pierce, Devin Singletary. Do you have a take on this one? You want to take running backs against Carolina. You want to take anybody against Carolina, right? So this is why CJ Stroud was up there in terms of quarterbacks. But if he's up there, and if I go to wide receivers, right, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, they're up towards the top here. So right, everyone's stacking the passing game. And if I go to the running backs here for Houston, they're sitting here at 1 and under 1%, right? This looks like, to me, one of the best leverage spots you could possibly get on the slate. One, for a couple of reasons. They're both cheap. Two, it's indecisive. That's keeping the ownership down. I don't really know which way it's going to go. Pierce has been pretty bad all season long. He's had some tough defenses to go against, and Singletary got some more work last week. Even in a 50-50 split, if one of these guys gets the end zone, there's a reasonable chance at their price tags. You might need them at the end of the day. If it's like 12 carries, 75 yards, a touchdown, a couple of receptions, that adds up for a cheap running back, and specifically because no one's using them. Do you have a take here, or are you just going in on the passing game? Because as much as I like the passing game, I want to mix in these guys from a tournament perspective.
Yeah, I don't think I really want to mix them in all that much. Like, I don't trust either of them. I think maybe they could get in for a touchdown, but I think this is going to be a massive scoring game at the running back position today. And I don't think either of these guys are going to be the ones who give a slate-breaking performance. So I do have Dameon Pierce in the pool. Devin Singletary is so cheap, I don't think it's wrong to do it. But not going to be for me personally today. Pierce is in my pool, but is my lowest owned running back.
All right, so not too. Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I don't want like 15 or 20% because I do.
Yeah, I'm over the field realistically. Like
yeah.
I have 5%, and the field's going to be at like 2. So like I'm over doubling it.
Yeah, that's to me more of a sprinkle, not a single entry, not a 3 entry, but I would like exposure in MME. And I do agree with your take right between Hall, Kamara, Pollard, Pacheco, Jonathan Taylor, McCaffrey, Swift. You just look at some of these guys. One, not ETN. There's one or probably 2 of those guys are going to have 22 plus fantasy points, right? So you're going to need
maybe 30 plus today.
Yeah, you're going to need at least one of these guys, if not 2. To really come through today. So I agree with that, but I do like sprinkling in. It just gives you a very different to go from a Kamara to a Pierce or a Singletary, right? Sure, you're losing some expectation, but you're getting a lot of salary to get a CMC, to get a Tyreek Hill, guys that are a little bit tougher to get, I think, in terms of overall roster construction. All right, let's go to receiver. What do you think of that chalk out here this week? So I used to do all those Millionaire Maker articles. I just don't have the time to do all the data, sort through it, and then write the article anymore. But this is a week to me where in large field tournaments, now for cash, right? I'm playing Zay Flowers, right? I think that makes a lot of sense to do that. But it's not Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson hitting the top of the ownership this week. So this is a week where I think it's okay to be a little different because we have so many games. And you see the guys that are getting there now. A.J. Brown's having a massive season. But Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, Nico Collins, George Pickens, there's a salary constraint in DFS. You can't get all of the guys you actually would like to play on your lineups this week. This would be a week I'm very willing to go against the grain from a tournament perspective. How do you think you should be handling it? What does your ownership currently look like?
One thing I want to say quick is we got almost 1,000 people watching and just barely over 100 likes. So hit the like button. It's free content. Sponsored by FanDuel. You want to keep it free. We need those like buttons on YouTube. So keep smashing that. I am partially embracing some chalk, and then I have a few pieces I'm getting quite different with today. I got about 20% Tyreek Hill, trying to get as over the field as him as I possibly can. Raheed Shaheed is actually my highest owned receiver at 21% today. He's my favorite punt on the board. I would have liked it a lot more if Michael Thomas wasn't playing, but at least he probably won't be chalk now that Michael Thomas is playing.
No one's going to really be going to him now.
Exactly. Josh Downs, I really like today. Nice cheap price tag. The Saints have a phenomenal defense, but they struggle to slot receivers, and Josh Downs pretty much exclusively sticks in the slot. And so I like him quite a bit.
You want Josh Downs or Tank Dell? 4,800 on DraftKings. Big decision point for a lot of people today. Where are you at?
Josh Downs.
I'm on Downs as well. From the cash game perspective, I think tournament, they both have enormous upside. But I wanted to pose that because that is a question I think a lot of people have right now. Please continue.
Yeah, same page. I think that makes a lot of sense. Zay Flowers, Nico Collins, Jordan Addison. I like all these guys. I'm on the same page with Squirrel, and I'm buying his take that Brandon Powell might get a little more involved today. He's so wildly cheap that I'm getting to him as well. Chris Olave and Adam Thielen, two other guys I really like, and then I'm going to try and get over the field on Cooper Kupp as well. I do have a question for you, Britt, because this is something I was really struggling with, and so I dipped it into two. I made a second cash team because I really couldn't decide.
You're deaning it.
Yeah, exactly. Travis Etienne, Adam Thielen, and Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah.
Or Isaiah Pacheco, Jordan Addison, and Nico Collins.
I think your second one will be much more popular. I like Pacheco. I love Nico. I would probably go with the second one personally.
Yeah, I split it into two.
If you like ETN and think he has the big game, I mean, he's getting in the end zone. He's really doing it all. I have no problem playing that, but I think the second one is probably the way I would go, TJ.
Yeah, I think I might drop the second one. I think I might drop the first one a little bit and add more of those entry fees to the second one, but I'm going to keep with the two because I do really like both these lineups.
Yeah, I wouldn't call you a donkey or anything for playing that first one. I think they're both pretty reasonable. All right, something I always like to do, search for low-owned wide receivers. This is definitely a week you can mix it up that have some upside. So I'm just going to scroll down the projected ownership. Once you get into this, 7-8 range, you start to find some guys that I think just have tremendous upside. One being Chris Olave. He's just 8% owned today. 92% of the people are pretty silly. He's one of my favorite receivers on the day. I know you like his over. The other show liked his over. I'm playing in cash. His targets are insane. Fast-paced game, indoors. How do you not want to play Chris Olave at 6,400 on DraftKings today? One of my favorite receivers. Puka, another guy, right? So he had the big week last week. Cooper Kupp, who knows really how it's going to play out between those two, but to get Puka, he's expensive. Nobody's really going to be going there. I think he certainly has some upside. If you want touchdown upside, you've got Rashee Rice for Kansas City if you want to play in the snow. But there's Devontae Smith, he's 6,700. Sure, it's A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's 8,000, and everybody's playing A.J. Brown, it looks like, at least according to our ownership. Devontae Smith looks like a nice leverage play. T. Higgins looks like a great leverage play. Everyone down here looks like a leverage play. To me, your boy Shaheed down to 2.5%, right? Because Michael Thomas is in, where he was looking to be, I think he was up in the close to double digits when we were sort of trying to figure out if Michael Thomas was going to play. You mentioned Powell. There's just a wide variety of sub 10% owned wide receivers. This is the week to do it. Try to include at least one, if not two, in most of your tournament builds. If you're hand building, set some rules, however you're doing it. I just like, this is the week for me with the highest owned receivers being Tank Dell and Zay Flowers and some of these guys to really mix it up.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I like a lot of those plays that you mentioned. I really like T. Higgins in tournaments. I'm getting to a lot of Rashid Shaheed, like I mentioned, and then mixing in players like Lamar Jackson is going to be the highest owned quarterback today, but nobody's playing any Rashad Bateman. Nobody's playing any Odell Beckham Jr. Obviously, we want to get to Flowers and Andrews more often, but these guys are so stupidly cheap. All it really takes for them is to either lock into a touchdown or get 4 or 5 catches for 60, 70 yards, and they crush it. So I like those guys a lot in stacks as well.
All right, we'll get to tight end in just a minute. First, I want to tell you about our friends at FanDuel. Crunch Time is presented by them. Bet $5 on any money line, and you can get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. And then all customers get a profit boost every day. This is for new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21. Thanks to FanDuel for sponsoring the show. And there is an NBA yearly premium sale. NBA's, it's kicking off. There are shows basically every day. You've got Lineup HQ, some other stuff going to be working for NBA each and every day. You can lock in a full season of NBA premium at a $50 discount. Fantasy pick'em tools for prize picks, underdog. Check out the link for anything regarding that and get yourself an NBA subscription. The NBA projections team at RotoGrinders, absolutely phenomenal. All right, let's go to tight end. We'll talk a little defense. We'll take some questions. So tight end, right? You mentioned Lamar Jackson. Everyone's playing Zay Flowers. No one's playing Mark Andrews. It makes no sense to me. Against Arizona, Mark Andrews is going to go nuts. A great leverage play as your tight end, right? So just imagine Lamar, he's going to be popular. He gets his touchdowns. But if you fade the touchdowns going to Zay Flowers and they end up to Mark Andrews at low ownership, and then Trey McBride stinks, I mean, you are just absolutely crushing the field with trying to do something like that. So I think Andrews at 6% ownership, maybe it comes in a little bit higher because everyone is playing Lamar Jackson. Looks to me like one of the best ways to get leverage on a tournament field. Love him. The cash tight end is Trey McBride on both sites. On FanDuel, if you have a couple extra bucks, I think Jake Ferguson is also in play. I think he's 4,900 over there instead of 4,700 of McBride. It looks like those are both the two most popular tight ends. I don't know, between Hawkinson, Andrews, and Kelsey, I mean, TJ, it's almost impossible to me that one of those guys doesn't post like the performance you have to have. And I know McBride's cheap and he's getting targets, but I mean, come on. How are you handling the tight end position today from a GPP theory wise?
McBride's my highest owned guy for sure.
Still doing it?
Talented prospect stepping into a big role. I like it quite a bit today. He is my highest owned. Of the big guys, my favorite, I think, is probably Mark Andrews, but TJ Hawkinson is right alongside with him. I would drop Travis Kelce significantly below it just because of his price tag.
Yeah.
But I'm getting to a lot of Dalton Schultz, pairing him with my CJ Stroud lineups. Logan Thomas is a low-owned GPP play I like quite a bit today. And then Dallas Goedert, I love quite a bit in my stacks with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, Goddard. You've got a guy like George Kittle with Deebo Samuel out. One of Ayuk or Kittle pretty much always has a big game, and they should be pushed, I think, reasonably well against Cincinnati. We didn't really talk too much about Cincinnati with Joe Burrow.
I didn't mention Kittle enough, but I do like him a lot.
Yeah, but like Burrow with T, and then you run it back with Kittle, CMC, or whatever. You can also use Chase. That does get a little bit expensive. I think Purdy stacks. Looks like he's going to be cleared from the concussion and play. Stats were pretty bad once he had the concussion, but with the week off, I think he should be a full go in this game. Certainly like that game from a scoring perspective. If Minnesota and a bunch of nobodies can score on San Francisco, what do you think? Joe Burrow, who I would imagine is probably about as close to healthy as he's going to be for the rest of the season, coming off the bye week. With Jamar Chase, with T. Higgins back and healthy, I mean, this is a game that could really shoot out. So I certainly like that game as well. Pretty much everyone but Irv Smith. Don't play Irv Smith at tight end, TJ. doesn't really get all the targets, so I wouldn't go.
I got like one or two Irv Smith lineups, I think, in my 150 set build, but yeah. I agree with you there. He's not my main guy that I'm going to. I do think though Burrow is one of the very best GPP quarterbacks on the entire slate. 6K, he should be probably 7.2, 7.3. Nobody's going to be playing him today. I love Burrow in tournaments.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting as well. Defense thoughts real quick. The Falcons, cheap. The Seahawks, I sort of agree with the ownership where these are going to go. These are definitely going to be the two most popular defenses. If you need salary, I mean, you can go the 2K defenses. What do we have? We have the Broncos at 2K. Probably wouldn't dabble too much with the Patriots, although they are garnering some ownership. I'd almost rather play the Broncos and just hope, right? I don't know. It's very hard to sack Mahomes, but just hope some fluky stuff between the snow, the cold, the temperatures, the flu, something adds up there. You can go to some of those. There's a couple other guys. You can you can convince me the Bengals, right, against possibly coming back a game too early, Brock Purdy, probably not on the Cardinals. I would probably not use them. But there's a wide variety of defenses. Any specific ones you'd wanted to point out for the people?
The Minnesota Vikings are the defense that I'm going to the most today. I like the Vikings, the Bengals, and the Rams. 3 really cheap plays today, all coming in at a projected of single-digit ownership. I'm getting to a lot of Jaguars. I would like the Falcons if they weren't so highly owned, but that makes me want to get way less in tournaments. And then the Steelers and the Seahawks are the other ones I'm going to, trying to keep it nice and cheap.
If you want to start off the game with 4 sacks, you can pay up for the Eagles. They should basically start with 14 points. And then any points given up after that will be subtracted because they will most certainly get after the quarterback today. Howell just taking way too many sacks on a historic pace for that. So a good way to get some points. I think they're cheap on Yahoo, but they are expensive, but certainly don't mind mixing it in because you can make, if you don't pay for a high-priced wide receiver or Christian McCaffrey, you can certainly afford to get an expensive defense if you want from your tournament builds on both DraftKings and FanDuel today. All right, so we've got some time here for some questions. You can throw them into YouTube. You can throw them into the RotoGrinders Discord, into the live stream chat while you're in the RotoGrinders Discord. Again, if you wanted to just scroll down a little bit and you wanted to find this cool new channel, I believe it's called... Oh, where did it go, TJ? I saw it a little while ago. I don't know where it went, but there's a new Discord channel. Keep your eye out for it. Some new stuff coming to RotoGrinders very soon. So in the YouTube, let's go to that first here. Kevin wants to know, FanDuel cash, Ferguson in the Atlanta D or McBride in the Seattle D?
McBride in Seattle by a lot for me.
Yeah, if that's not a 1-for-1 swap salary-wise, but McBride and Seattle D, if you can get it, without question, would be the combination I would go in for. And if you can't, I'd probably do McBride and the Atlanta D as my next one before going to Ferguson's very close. I don't know. I'm sort of torn between him and McBride on FanDuel personally. Let's see. What else we got going on the YouTube? Corey wants to know, any love for a YOLO Julio Jones? That's going to be a pass for me, TJ. Not too. We know where the fantasy points are coming from. Jalen Hurts, DeAndre Swift, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert. Those are really the only guys that should be in your Philadelphia player pool.
Yeah, I agree with you. No Julio Jones for me.
All right, let's see. Way too many spams. Let's see here. What do we got here? Eagles or Colts stack in a DraftKings tournament. So the Eagles, I think the Eagles are very interesting. You love Hurts, right? So he's coming in at 7.5%. AJ Brown is getting expensive. Goddard is, I don't know, he's not even showing up on the top of the screen here for high-owned tight ends. I think I would probably go Philadelphia. What are you doing in your Philadelphia stacks? I know you like Hurts. Is it more AJ Brown? What are you doing with Devonta Smith? Because on DraftKings, he's not too far off price-wise from A.J. Brown. Everybody's going to go to A.J. Brown. Then you've got Goddard from the tight end perspective. How are you handling Philadelphia?
So for what it's worth, especially so unless it's a cash game lineup, and I sometimes will make an exception. So my cash game right now has Lamar with Zay Flowers. It's a 1-1 stack, no other pass catchers. I sometimes make exceptions for Hurts and Lamar, but I basically exclusively have bare minimum 2 pass catchers, usually 3 in every single one of my stacks. So I would go with the Eagles stack in that one. And my preference would be you do it with AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert. You want to get a little bit different, you go with Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. You want to get really different and win first place in a tournament. If Jalen Hurts throws 5 touchdown passes, you do it with AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert.
Just roll them all out there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like if he throws for 300 plus yards, 4 or 5 touchdown passes, and you have all the guys that he threw the touchdowns to, that's how you finish first in a GPP.
All right. Brendan wants to know, CMC and Gallup or Pollard and Dell for DraftKings cash? I would 100% choose Pollard and Dell for my DraftKings cash team if I was on. And I might even one up you. I'm on Downs over Dell personally. Save yourself an extra $100. All right, let's go a couple more questions on YouTube. Jets D, right? So we're looking for some. So I like defense. I think is really wide open this week. So we talked about it. The Jets. I think you could play the Giants. I think you play the Broncos. I think you could play the Texans. I think you could play the Saints. I think you play the Colts. I think you play the Chiefs, right? I think you play a lot of defenses today. So the Jets D is certainly viable. Probably not my top option for cash, but against Tyrod Taylor, absolutely rolling out the Jets D. What say you, TJ?
Yeah, love the Jets D today.
All right. McCaffrey or Travis Etienne? Everyone's going to take Christian McCaffrey, right? Like, that's not even a question, right? Salary-wise, I think salary-wise, you can make it a question, though.
Salary-wise, it's Etienne, but straight up, it's definitely McCaffrey.
All right. Let's see if we got any more. Pacheco or Pollard for FanDuel cash. So on FanDuel, probably Pollard.
Yeah.
Pollard 7,600 on FanDuel. And let's see what's Pacheco on FanDuel. Let me pull this up here. Let's see. Pacheco is, I know I was looking at Pacheco more so 7,400, right? So I'm going to play Pollard on
definitely
FanDuel.
Pollard on
and then if you want
FanDuel.
Pacheco and you're playing on DraftKings, his price tag over there 6,100 or 6,200 looks much better and much more cash viable on DraftKings today. And I love his. If you're looking for a sports bet, either on FanDuel or anywhere else, over 15.5 receiving yards for Pacheco is something I wrote up on Scores and Odds, and I think you can still get it at that. One of my favorite bets of the day, or whenever I rate everything up very early. Let's see, a couple more.
Let's get us up over 200 likes on for YouTube. We're only 20 likes away right now, so keep smashing that like button. I think Jose Reyes makes a great point. It was Marcus Long just made a great point in chat. I've used the just play Dolphins strategy all year, and it's never not cashed. I think the Dolphins are going super low owned today, and like much lower owned than they should. I think a Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill stack could be an absolute moneymaker today that not too many people are getting to. So I like that quite a bit. Couple other things in YouTube that I'll get for you. We both host, and I'm in a monologue anyways, might as well. Single bullet and a DK Millie Maker. Which low owned cheap QB should I go with? I would probably go somebody like maybe a Derek Carr, but like Tua Tagovailoa is sub 5% owned, and that's like, I think that is the guy for a low owned QB today. And then what's your take on Kareem Hunt? I have Kareem Hunt in 10% of lineups because that's an afternoon game. What I'm going to do is, if Jerome Ford is out, I'm going to try and transition some of my Amari Demercado lineups into Kareem Hunt. If Jerome Ford is in, I'm basically just going to swap all my Hunt lineups into Demercado.
Yeah, I think Ford, right? He made the surprise Thursday and then Friday practice. To me, that seems like he's probably going to end up playing, right?
It looked all good, like he was going to be playing, but then they called up Jordan Wilkins from the practice squad and just added another running back to the active roster, which muddied things.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Like I was hoping the Zach Moss would sit, right? Because you missed practice Thursday and Friday, but then he ends up playing. Just didn't end up that way. So
who knows if he even is? Like, I honestly don't think that we're gonna see that much Zach Moss today. I'm almost treating it as he's just going to be the backup quarterback or the backup running back, kind of in case of emergency.
Let's see here. Saquon Barkley, we didn't really talk about him. Barkley's coming in on FanDuel at 10% owned, on DraftKings at let's see, it would be helpful if I could actually spell around 3.5% owned. I didn't even really look at Saquon against the Jets. Now, if you want to play the Jets, you want to be able to run against them. I think he's interesting from a deep sleeper tournament perspective, but I mean, you look at the guys, I understand why he's so low owned, right? Because you just have amazing running backs in amazing spots that are cheaper than him. Why on earth would you play Saquon Barkley? TJ, are you going to be playing Saquon Barkley?
No, I got 0% Barkley. I do like that low ownership, but I just don't really like playing people going up against the Jets unless they're a stud of a team, and the Jets realistically should just be able to stack the box up and walk them down.
All right, going to go to the live stream chat on Discord. Let's see here. Pacheco or Pollard, FanDuel cash. We answered that one. That one's going to be Pollard on FanDuel for sure for me. How much Mostert do we have today? Just an insane. I saw him on Yahoo. He had some insane price. He's the second highest price running back on FanDuel too. I mean, this is an insane price for Mostert today. TJ, I got to imagine you probably don't have too much of him, but the playing only Dolphins at 7,700 on DraftKings, probably the site I'd have the most interest in him. Where are you standing on him?
Still no Devin A. Chain. I got 3x the field on Raheem Mostert today. He's projected for sub 5%. I got 15%. I love Raheem Mostert for tournaments.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, could just walk into what 2 or 3 touchdowns without question if everything falls his way with how good that new Miami offense can be. So I would certainly have no qualms with anyone doing that. All right, Gray, that's way too many. That's a 4 for take too long. Narrow that down, maybe a 3 for, and we'll get your question onto that one.
We are getting a last minute report that like something that has been hinted at throughout the week that Chuba Hubbard will be more involved in the Panthers offense this week, getting more first and second down touches. He's currently projected for 3% owned on DraftKings. I have 32%.
I see there's going to be some bets you can get in on him right now. 39.5, I think, is the line. I think I'm going to go jam that in before everything changes on that one. He's someone, so these late news, right? We saw this earlier in the year. If you can get late news into your tournament fields is one of the biggest advantages you can have in NFL. So we currently have Chuba projected at what? 3% owned?
3% owned. I bet you he'll be closer to like 8 or 9, but yeah, so I have 32%. If you go to like a 20 or something on that against Houston, I think that is a very, very reasonable way to get an advantage on the field right now. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Demercado and Hubbard, I think I really like the idea of going to these cheap running backs this week.
Yeah, I think I would play Hubbard, I think, against Houston over Demercado. So this is just going to lower the Demercado, the Pierces, those type of guys' ownerships even more. The only people that are really going to get these are the 150 maxers. The Sims, those type of people reacting to late news. This is so late. This is going to be one of the easiest ways to get advantage. Even if you're in a single entry right now, TJ, you're going to just get a massive edge on the field by trying to get Chuba onto a team or something like that, in my opinion, against Houston. If he's going to get more work, he's been the better back all season. Yeah. I see no reason why he can't have himself a reasonable day today.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. We got a question in chat between all the spam. Last piece. Oh, wow, it disappeared as all the spam. Last piece, DK Largefield, Demercado, Henderson, or Sanders. That's Demercado for me by a lot.
Yeah, I would play Hubbard over Demercado now, though, correct?
Yes, I would still do that. I'm just kind of assuming maybe they already have him in the lineup since they asked 3 different guys.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Gray Bill wants to know Minshew, Olave, and Downs, or Mac Jones, Bourne, and Waddle. I mean, without question, by a million is number 1 for me. I love that Indianapolis New Orleans game today.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right. A couple more on YouTube. FanDuel Cash Ayuk. So Ayuk on FanDuel, not someone I was eyeing. Let's see. What's his price over there at wide receiver? If my mouse would work. Sorting by price, I'm sure he's up there. So he's 77. It's tough.
I'd rather play him on DraftKings where he's cheaper.
Yeah. I think I'd probably take Olave over him straight up today if I was making a choice. And Olave's a little cheaper. So I think I would take Olave.
Me too.
He's in like no man's land on FanDuel. So it's either he's like the last guy before you get to the studs. Like him, but probably I would just play Olave.
Yeah, somebody asking, like, same guys asking Ayuk or AJ Brown. It's AJ Brown by a very, very large margin.
Yes, for sure. DraftKings Cash, 3 running backs or 4 wide receivers. Definitely 3 running backs for me on DraftKings today. This Chuba Hubbard news. I'm not going to be able, while doing the show in the next 4 minutes, to swap to him in cash, but I think Hubbard might even be cash viable now on DraftKings. It just gets you into, instead of getting into the Downs tier, at wide receiver, you can get another, 6K, high 5K-ish wide receiver. There's not really a lot of guys in that tier, but maybe it gets you to a Nico Collins or somebody like that. Maybe you get to upgrade a defense or something else. So I think he's pretty viable over there. I think Hubbard, probably one of the best moves you can make right now. Let's see, a couple more things. Howell viable in single entry. Probably not for me. You can pass certainly on the Eagles. I think him to McLaurin is a very like Howell, McLaurin with
Logan Thomas
AJ Brown.
and AJ Brown.
Yeah, right. Like that makes a lot of sense from a tournament. I would not play Howell on a cash game. Just way too much volatility. And there's ways he gets sacked like 7-8 times, and this game gets out of hand very quickly. But there's also certain ways where I think he could have a good game, but only for me from a tournament perspective. A large field, I'm going to need multiple entries to get to that. Taylor or Jones for cash?
Is Jones?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who Jones. Aaron Jones? I mean, that's Jonathan Taylor without question today.
Yeah, I don't think either of them are cash viable, but I would go with Justin Taylor. If it's Aaron Jones, I would definitely go with Taylor of that group. Somebody asked me if they should start Chuba Hubbard over Derrick Henry. No, I think you still go Derrick Henry there. What do you think about Lawrence or Cousins in a FanDuel GPP? That's Cousins for me, but I know you like Lawrence.
Yeah, I just think the Steelers, they do have the good defense and you can run on them. So I like your ETN call. But I'm not a believer in the Steelers. One of the first bets I've made this week was the Jaguars minus 1.5. I think it got up to 2 or 2.5. The Steelers, literally, they're 4-2. They could literally be 0-6. I don't know if they lucked into it, but they've gotten some extremely timely turnovers and just weird stuff in every single one of their wins. Not a big believer in them. One of the worst offenses in the league. So, play Lawrence with Christian Kirk. Or Evan Ingram with ETN because he's involved in the pass game. I think all that's viable. I don't like the Steelers basically at all right now. Najee Harris, no. Chuba Hubbard over Najee Harris very easily for me. I know Najee Harris is cheap. I would go to Chuba Hubbard at this particular time. 5K and under wide receiver. Yes, Downs. It's Downs or Tank Dell basically for that sub 5K wide receiver. I'm on Downs and cash over Dell personally. Some projections might disagree, but that's personally where I am. I want the fast-paced game indoors against a team where Pittman might get some lockdown coverage. Gardner's locking on to Downs in the slot. I think Downs in store for a very, very big game today. Basically just a minute away. TJ, any final thoughts?
Nope, that's about it from me. I'm excited for this one. I got 2 different cash teams. I got 150 in the mini max. I got max entered the $3 for 100K to first. We got a fun little day out there today. Good luck, everyone, as my guy Dre would say. Hope to see you in the standings just below myself as I'm at the top. But we do have a fun little slate today, so this is going to be fun.
Yeah, everyone go check out the RotoGrinders Discord. There's a Sims Beta NFL channel. It's new. You might want to go check it out. Very interested to see what that's going to be. Other than that, click the like button on the way out. TJ, they got up to 189. Let's get a couple more. I'll throw out a couple bets here just for a minute or two at the end from the late game. So I'm on the Pacheco over 15.5 receiving yards, if you can get that. It looks like the Kelsey receiving yard lines. I got this early in the week at 72.5. It's at 75.5. I would still have no problem taking the over on that personally. I see Grant has a good one. An Adam Thielen touchdown. He's got like a bunch of touchdowns this year. Is plus 225. It looks like on FanDuel it's plus 220. I think that looks like a pretty good bet. That's at the top of scores and odds. The prop model on scores and odds is checks notes 46 and 23 plus 20 units so far for NFL on the prop model. So you can get yourself a scores and odds subscription. You can go check the prop model. And you can just basically retire, right? So prop model's been on fire so far this year. The NHL prop model, when the block shots pop up, you got to bet those. It's just insane. NBA's going in full swing. There's a million bets on there too. So if you are in a sports betting state, make sure to check out scores and odds. Great subscription. The prop model's absolutely killing it. And no surprise because the projections crew, very good behind the scenes here at RotoGrinders as well. That's going to do it for us. Click the like on the way out. Best of luck in all your games, everybody. For TJ, I'm Brit. Thanks for watching, and we out ya.